absolutely everything you think about yourself and the universe could be an illusion. As far as you know, you are real and exist in a universe that was born 14 billion years ago and that gave rise to galaxies, stars, the Earth, and finally you. Except, maybe not. You may actually not exist for real, but be the dream of a dead universe. You and everything you think exists. Crazy as it sounds, this may be an unavoidable consequence of our best scientific theories about the universe. Okay, this is a bit much. Let's start at the beginning. We need to understand three concepts for this idea to make sense. 1. The arrow of time. What distinguishes the past from the future? Put a drop of red ink into a glass of water, and you see the ink spread until it fills the container, but never the opposite. Colored water where ink spontaneously concentrates and becomes a drop at the surface again. Time always seems to flow in the direction in which the ink spreads. But if you take a microscope, all you will see will be a swarm of molecules colliding at random. There are no rules, no forwards and backwards. Every individual motion that happens can occur in reverse. But we perceive a sort of arrow of time that makes things happen in one direction. How does this phenomenon occur? Well, this arrow of time is not actually fundamental, but a matter of probability. When ink molecules spread to fill a glass, there are many different slots of space they can occupy, and therefore many different possibilities to combine them. And just like your chances of winning the lottery grow the more tickets you have, the probability that ink molecules will end up filling the glass is much higher than the probability that they'll concentrate in just one spot. So it's not that the ink forming a drop again is forbidden by the laws of physics, it's just extremely unlikely. To see it, you'd have to wait about 10 to the power of 100 sextillion years, a 1 followed by 100 sextillion zeros. If you had this much time to spare, eventually, by pure random chance, you'd see a red blob form again. Actually, with enough time, you could see any shape forming, like, for example, a small, red, soggy brain. Okay, let's move on to idea 2. 2. The far future of the universe. Our universe was born 14 billion years ago in the Big Bang. It expanded and evolved to give rise to the myriads of galaxies and things. In other words, the universe is kind of a glass of water with a lot of ink doing stuff. It has an arrow of time. But the universe is not a static glass, it seems to be getting bigger at an ever-increasing speed because of dark energy. Basically, everything in it is getting more and more diluted. In about 100 trillion years, the last star will die. Then, few interesting things will happen for the next few decillions, vantillions, and googles of years. Eventually, the universe will be a dark place fully dominated by dark energy, a rapidly expanding ball of pure space almost devoid of matter. You might think that this would lead to the ultimate death of everything, but dark energy has one last surprise for you. In a universe dominated by dark energy, space expands so dramatically that it creates a cosmic horizon around you, a border beyond which nothing will ever be able to reach you, not even light. So for every practical purpose, the universe has become a glass of finite size about 36 billion light-years wide, surrounded by an impassable cosmic horizon. Such a universe glass is basically a giant black hole turned inside out. We know that due to quantum effects, all black holes emit a tiny amount of particles, a phenomenon known as Hawking radiation. And so does our inside-out black hole. In the end, this radiation will fill the universe glass with particles again. At this point, so far in the future that giving you a number has no more meaning, we've reached the true final state. The universe has now become a closed box full of particles at an extremely low but finite temperature. And since they have a temperature, they undergo random motions. Or in other words, a glass filled with water and ink and an infinite amount of time ahead. Things are about to become interesting again. 3. Typing monkeys and fake universes. Eternity is a long, long time. So now, even the most extremely unlikely things can happen. The fluctuating particles are bumping into each other over and over and over again, creating every combination of particles that's possible. They're like a monkey typing at random on a typewriter. Almost all of the time it types gibberish. But with enough time, eventually it will write the first acts of Hamlet. And with even more time, the complete works of Eminem. If ink in our universe glass generates any random arrangements of particles, what could they be? Well, a spontaneous fluctuation could give rise to a planet, or to a galaxy, or even to a lot of them. So maybe our universe has already ended, and all we see around us is a pop-up universe. Not a universe that evolved from a Big Bang, but one that fluctuated into existence by pure chance. And that, like the drop of ink, will only exist for a while before dissolving again. Being random, pop-up universes could be similar to ours but with funny glitches. In some of these universes, dinosaurs are riding snails. In another, stars are made of blueberries. In another, you're wearing a funny hat. Scientists in such universes wouldn't understand those glitches, so maybe the greatest mysteries of physics are just nonsense bugs of our pop-up universe. But not all possible fluctuations of our dead universe have the same probability of occurring. Smaller fluctuations are much more probable than bigger ones. A planet is more likely than a galaxy. But you know what's even way more likely? A human brain. Are you actually just a brain? You think, therefore you exist. But what else do you truly know? In the end, your brain is just interpreting signals from your senses and creating a world that you experience. So technically, you could be just your brain that thinks the world is real. And if we follow the logic of the ink in the universe class, in particular, you could be a disembodied brain that, just by chance, emerged in a dead universe with your complete set of knowledge and memories. This is a pretty bizarre idea, but if we do the maths, it's kind of pretty solid. Let's compare the number of brains inside bodies in a living universe with the number of naked brains in a dead universe. Let's go really big and imagine that a total of 100 quadrillion humans will live around Earth, and that the same amount of people will live around every star in the universe. If we add this together, we get about 10 to the power of 41 brains inside bodies that will exist. However, in a dead universe that has had enough time to explore all possible fluctuations and that will exist forever, the number of naked brains that would emerge is, well, infinite. So the probability that you're a floating brain is not only vastly larger than the probability that you're a real human, it's so inconceivably larger that we can't even meaningfully quantify the difference. How do you compare a number to infinity? So, are you a floating brain that exists for one moment in time, then basically forever passes, and then you exist for another moment in time? Maybe not even in that order. Maybe your life happens backwards and you just don't notice. Maybe you've lived trillions of times already. Are you the dream of a dead universe? Really? Like, really? Well, probably not. First of all, there are a few loopholes. For example, dark energy could behave completely differently from what we think today and lead us to another future. Or maybe our dead universe will be too motionless to allow the creation of brains, even with infinite time. Or maybe the universe will end up dying in another way. Our understanding of the cosmos doesn't have a solid enough foundation for anyone to worry if they're real or not. Loopholes aside, if you were a fluctuating brain, all the laws of physics stored in your brain would have originated at random and shouldn't bear any relation to the real world. But we just used those laws to prove that you're a floating brain. So even if you believe that you are a floating brain, you'd have to admit that you have no good reason to believe that you are actually a floating brain. Okay, so this hallucinatory trip might teach us something about our theories about the universe. But in the end, it's just a really weird exercise in what you can do with physics. An exercise of what brains and bodies are able to think about. So don't worry, you're not a dream of the dead universe. Probably. Friends make life good. They provide the scaffolding that makes it not just bearable, but fun. They give us a sense of meaning and purpose and are a source of security, self-esteem, and happiness. Almost nothing predicts how happy you will be as how connected you feel, and a lack of social connection is associated with a number of diseases and a shorter life. But maybe you have scrolled through your phone unsure who to call to go to a movie with, to celebrate with, or ask for comfort. You may realize that you don't have enough friends and feel lonely. And it's not just you. Disconnectedness and loneliness are widespread. Many people want more close friends but don't know how to get them. Surprisingly, nowadays, loneliness is highest among young people, whose relationships were also hit especially hard by the global pandemic. Social distancing stopped teens and young adults from mingling in classrooms, clubs, or dorms. Millions of friendships, maybe lifelong friendships, that might have blossomed will never exist, with profound long-term consequences for our collective happiness. The good news is that it's not too late, and there are lots of friends to be found. We'll mix scientific information with actionable advice in this video, but we can't address every individual situation. People, cultures, and schedules are different. If you suffer from chronic loneliness, you can also watch the video we made about it. Okay, as with all important things in life, making friends is infuriatingly simple but not necessarily easy. But it works through a few pretty straightforward mechanisms. The most important thing about making friends. People make friends with other people when they spend casual time together. This is how our ancestors formed their relationships, because humans lived in small, close-knit communities in which options for making friends were limited, so we just formed good relationships with the people who were around us. This is why it's so easy to form new friendships in school and university. Society locks you and your peers in a building for several years. You share similar activities, but more importantly, similar schedules. Overlapping and fluctuating social circles form, naturally giving you regular FaceTime and shared experiences with many different people. Time to find others with similar worldviews or senses of humor. Proximity can be more important than similar interests. One study found that in student dormitories, the distance between rooms was the strongest friendship predictor. Living closer together meant a higher chance of becoming friends. Another study showed that being physically present in a class a lot without saying a word makes others more sympathetic to you. So the most important principle of making friends is to regularly spend time with people in the real world. This alone can make it happen automatically and trumps all other advice. But don't forget that making friends is not a numbers game or a competition. Don't compare yourself to others. Everyone has a social calibrator that can change as you go through life. Maybe you were more introverted as a teen, but yearn for connection in your 20s. Maybe you were part of sprawling social circles, but prefer fewer friends in your 30s. There is no right or wrong, only right for you. Why we don't have enough friends. The main reason for a lack of friendships is the simple fact that most people don't prioritize friendships nearly enough. They don't realize until it's too late that retaining friendships demands regular energy and attention. Although they are so important for happiness, friends often take a back seat to other life decisions. Work, commuting, romance, or kids take up so much time and energy that it's so much easier to crash on your couch and lose yourself in mindless activities. Especially as an adult, going for a bike ride, getting dinner, or visiting a hobby store takes much more mental effort and commitment than it did after school, when time ran slower and energy and curiosity were abundant. But it's not just adults who are too busy for friends. The average American teenager spends more time on TikTok every day than socializing at parties, events, or on the phone with friends combined. Established friendships don't require the same time investment as early friendships to keep up, but they do require some commitment. As life distracts you, it's easy to skip out on checking in when a friend goes through exciting or depressing times. And so many friendships fade for lack of attention, often by accident. Which is extra tragic because there is never only one person losing a friend, it's always at least two. Another thing that makes many people vulnerable is the way friendship networks are structured. The friendship paradox is the phenomenon that on average, most people have fewer friends than their friends. Which makes sense, since you're more likely to be friends with someone who has many friends than with someone who has few. Rather than being densely interconnected, friend networks are often built around central hubs. So if central people disappear from your life, this can deprive you of many connections at once. And it can lead to a distorted self-perception that you are less popular than others, although you are perfectly average. It can get worse quickly with big life events. Maybe you move for school, work, or love and are left without social networks. Or you had a breakup that left you with the smaller part of the formerly shared social pie. The reasons why you find yourself with less connection than you want are as diverse as people, but the underlying cause is almost always time. There is no shortcut. To make new friends and retain friendships, you have to prioritize relationships, spend time with people in real life, and make them feel that you care. So take a look at yourself and rebalance what you spend your life doing. How to make new friends. Studies have shown that new friendships can develop quite quickly, weeks after you meet someone. But it takes a few months for a casual friendship to become a close relationship, with the biggest impediment being time invested and the quality of your interactions. To make friends, it helps if you intentionally look for people you have things in common with and who are open to new relationships. You want to make it easy for yourself, so examine what kind of person you are. Generally speaking, Extroverts tend to crave sensory stimulation, spicier foods, loud music, or the excitement of engaging a crowd. Introverts, often confused with shy people, tend to be more sensitive to sensory stimulants and prefer quieter surroundings, fewer people, and even less spicy food. Different places attract different people. Not everybody can easily make friends at a bar or a football game. Not everybody finds a stroll through a park or a bookstore stimulating. Men especially form friendships around shared activities, but in general, it's a good idea to go to places that feel comfortable, where there are people you might like who do things you find interesting. Look for local clubs or opportunities to volunteer. Check out what hobby stores are around and dust off your Space Marines, or see if there are new D&D groups in your city and ask if you could join one. Check meetup apps for gaming nights or wine tasting, join a sports club, or look for people who go hiking or want to cook together. Another obvious avenue is your professional life. It helps if you work in a job that attracts people like you, so you might consider this when you choose a career. Deepening your relationship with colleagues can lead to great friendships, especially if you look for peers and there is no power imbalance. And of course, there are friends you've lost touch with. You may be able to revive some of these relationships. In some cases, all it needs is a call or an invitation. Research shows that more often than not, the other person will appreciate that you've reached out. There are likely way more opportunities to spend time with others than you are aware of. And if there aren't, you can take the initiative and create them. Invitations are signals to start friendships. So bring people together by having a dinner party, organizing a football game after work, or starting a board game group. Everybody appreciates people who organize fun things, and the simple act of reaching out can kickstart a self-propelling upward spiral of well-being, fun, and connectedness that can seriously improve the life of everyone around you in meaningful ways. If you meet someone you vibe with, it's pretty scary to make the first move, but they may feel the same way. Equally interested in a friendship, but also blocked by fear of rejection. So it's worth going for it. Worst case, they're not interested, which will sting for a few hours, but the best case could be a lifelong friendship. A risk well worth the reward. Once you've formed early connections, check in whether they have important things happening in their life. Of course, it's important not to be overbearing, but the more time you invest, the more opportunity you have to engage in meaningful banter or silly jokes. The fact that friendships take time also means that you need to be patient and kind with yourself, especially if you're out of practice. Things will not improve overnight, but slowly, step by step, if you keep up. Open up, care, and share. Many people don't have an issue being around others, but struggle to turn acquaintances into friends. So let's talk about two important principles that make it more likely that you'll connect: caring and sharing. In general, our favorite topic is ourselves and the things we care about, because we are literally at the center of our own universe. So people tend to like people who are genuinely interested in them. So if you want to make friends, your goal should be trying to learn what makes them tick. Just as important as caring about others is reciprocity and openness. To connect, you need to share the experiences that made you, you. Now, you don't want to overwhelm the other person and immediately spill out your deepest secrets, but open up a little and reveal personal things, because this also signals to others that it's okay to do the same. The best case is that you find shared experiences. Maybe you both had a hard time in school, maybe you share a passion for weird movies. Learning about others and sharing personal stories in a balanced way and not overdoing it is not an exact science. Noticing the line between opening up and oversharing requires practice and depends on the vibe of the conversation. One of the perplexities of life is that to get something, it can be helpful to convince yourself that you want it less than you do. In general, it's good to be laid back, have fun, and enjoy yourself. Do things for yourself without expectations, but also be open to social opportunities and accept invitations if they show up. And that's basically it. Give friendships more priority in your life. Check in with friends and regularly go to things to have fun. Show genuine interest in others and give them the opportunity to know you without selling yourself too hard. If you do this, you're on track. If this sounds a bit scary, the good news is that human brains are hardwired to seek connection. It's perfectly normal to seek out new friends, and there are many people who would welcome more close relationships. There are friendships up for grabs everywhere, and there are plenty of people who will be so happy to have you in their life. As a good friend, go get to know them. Are you free? Free to choose what you do and make decisions? Or are you an NPC, unable to decide anything for yourself? You feel that you have control over your life, or at least what you'll have for breakfast. But this may be an illusion. Physics actually may force you to go through life as if on rails, with no free will at all. You experience free will all the time, like when you decided to watch this video instead of doing something useful. Free will is your ability to decide by yourself what you do. It means that the future is an open arena that you can shape with your actions. It's at the core of human relationships. It means you are responsible for your actions, which is the basis of our moral and legal systems. There are too many dimensions for one short video: moral, psychological, biological, so we'll focus on the most essential part: is free will even possible? Two main philosophical camps are fighting about this. No matter how we represent them, they'll be upset about it, so we'll use our own words. The first camp claims that the very idea of free will is fundamentally incompatible with the laws of the universe. You are an NPC. Whatever you exactly are, it's somehow made up of your physical brain and body. And these are made of cells, which are made of proteins, which are made of atoms and particles like protons or electrons. So fundamentally, you're a specific, quite lovely, dynamic pattern of particles. Particles have no will, no motivation, no freedom. They blindly follow the laws of physics. And we don't know why, but most laws of physics are deterministic, which means that things happen the way they do because of the things that came before. If you play pool and hit a ball at a specific speed and angle, the laws of physics tell you exactly how all the balls on the table will behave, their speeds, recoil directions, everything. These laws completely decide the behavior of all balls on the table. At the microscopic level, things work very much like that, only without players. Actions and reactions affect all the particles in the universe, creating a chain of causal effects that extends throughout time from the past to the future. Things happen, making other things happen. Now imagine that if right after the Big Bang, a super smart supercomputer looked at every single particle in the universe and noted all their properties. Just by applying the deterministic laws of physics, it should be able to predict what all the particles in existence would be doing until the end of time. But if you're made of particles and it's technically possible to calculate what particles will do forever, then you never decided anything. Your past, present and future were already predetermined and decided at the Big Bang. That would mean there is a kind of fate and you are not free to decide anything. You may feel like you make decisions, but you're actually on autopilot. The motions of the particles that make up your brain cells that made you watch this video were decided 14 billion years ago. You're just in the room when it happens. You're only witnessing how the universe inside you unfolds in real time. But this can't be true because of quantum mechanics, right? Quantum processes are intrinsically random, not deterministic, and can't be predicted with total certainty. On the quantum pool table, balls can go randomly left or up or banana. Their behavior isn't set by what came before, but randomly decided in real time. But for the no free will camp, this doesn't affect their argument. They think that since quantum processes are random, they don't allow you to make any decisions. Because if there's randomness for the things that fundamentally make up your brain and body, these random processes make the decisions for you. How? Say an electron can randomly go right or left. If it goes left, it triggers electric currents between your neurons that create a neuronal process which triggers a long chain of actions that make you watch a YouTube video. Or it goes right and makes you clean your room. Just because the chain is extremely complex doesn't mean you have any control over it. So maybe your fate was not decided at the Big Bang, but it is decided at this very moment. The important part is that it's not decided by you. You get no say in this. You have no free will. Wow, this is kind of a bummer because the argument fundamentally seems to make sense. Except, no, screams the free will side. This is a really bad way to think about the universe. You are the main character. We know that we can reduce everything that exists to its basic particles and the laws that guide them. While this makes physics feel like the only scientific discipline that actually matters, there's a problem. You can't explain everything in our universe only in terms of particles. One key fact about reality that we can't explain by looking just at electrons and quantum stuff is emergence. Emergence is when many small things together create new fundamental traits that didn't exist before. A drop of water is just a sextillion H2O molecules. If you get water on your pants, they get wet. But what is wetness? H2O molecules are not wet, but your pants are definitely wet now. Many small things together just created something new that doesn't exist at the level of the individual molecules. Emergence occurs at all levels of reality, and reality seems to be organized in layers: atoms, molecules, cells, tissues, organs, you, society. Put many things in one layer together and they'll create the next layer up. Every time they do, entirely new properties emerge. One atom can't handle information, but many of them together can form a DNA molecule. Molecules are not alive, but many of them can form a cell, and cells are alive. With each jump up the complexity ladder, the rules of what's possible change. Completely new things emerge that are much more than the sum of their parts. And here, the reductionist view of the universe breaks down. The layers of reality need each other to make sense. You can explain living things with cells, cells with molecules, and molecules with atoms. But because of emergence, you can't start with quantum particles and reconstruct the universe. You can't explain galaxies with quantum mechanics or human psychology with quarks. This is not the whole story. Reality is not just structured in layers, but for some reason, the layers are also largely independent of each other. Things existing within the same layer can influence each other and maybe a layer up or down. But often they don't seem to influence things much higher up or down. To figure out how your organs work, you don't need quarks. To understand politics, you don't need to know about cells. If you want to explain things happening on one layer, you can only do that by staying close to that layer. No, screams the no free will camp in frustration. You can't just use magic to explain free will. But the emergence argument doesn't invoke magic. It just says that thinking about free will in terms of determinism and fundamental laws is a dead end. A kind of category error, like trying to explain galaxies by looking at your digestive tract. It's part of a reductionist school of thinking about the universe that very successfully shaped science for a long time, but that's challenged by emergence. So maybe trying to understand free will by looking at fundamental particles, deterministic laws, and quantum mechanics misses the point. The question we should be asking is, which layer of reality is relevant to free will? Well, just like no individual molecule creates wetness, not a single cell in your brain wants to watch YouTube. But one layer up, your brain, made of 80 billion interconnected neurons, does. On this layer, all the things relevant to you emerge: your consciousness, character, feelings, your fears and dreams. This is where you emerge. We don't know why and how, but we know that you're here right now. How all the things going on in your brain play off each other to make you who you are is a whole different can of worms. But on this layer of reality, you are part of the decision process. Because at this level, you are just one more physical cause of whatever happens in your brain. You are shaped by your decisions, and your decisions are shaped by you. You have a say about this layer of reality. You are not just witnessing how the universe inside you unfolds, you're actually taking part in it. And you're free to do so however you see fit. At least this is how some on the free will side see it. Conclusion and opinion. So, who's right? Is there free will? We don't know. If you ask us personally, we think the argument for free will is more appealing because it brings the complexity of the universe to the table. Maybe existence is just the sum of its parts, but at least for now, it seems the universe is not that simple. But even if we don't have free will, it's not clear what that changes for practical purposes. You and us, we humans, on a purely subjective basis, feel like we have free will and that your decisions are yours to make. As long as we're not sure either way, and If it feels like you're making decisions, what does it matter if a non-existent supercomputer could have calculated the future at the Big Bang? Or if quantum stuff all the way down randomly nudges your cells one way or the other? Free will that feels free is good enough for us. In any case, now you can decide what to do next. Maybe get some stuff done. Or watch more of our videos. It's your decision. Probably. Human existence is scary and confusing. A few 100,000 years ago, we became conscious and found ourselves in a strange place. It was filled with other beings. We could eat some could eat us. There was liquid stuff we could drink, things we could use to make more things. The daytime sky had a tiny yellow ball that warmed our skin. The night sky was filled with beautiful lights. This place was obviously made for us. Something was watching over us. We were home. This made everything much less scary and confusing. But the older we got, the more we learned about the world and ourselves. We learned that the twinkling lights are not shining beautifully for us, they just are. We learned that we're not at the center of what we now call the universe, and that it is much, much older than we thought. We learned that we're made of many little dead things, which make up bigger things that are not dead for some reason, and that we're just another temporary stage in a history going back over 1 billion years. We learned in awe that we live on a moist speck of dust moving around a medium-sized star in a quiet region of one arm of an average galaxy, which is part of a galaxy group that we will never leave. And this group is only one of thousands that together make up a galaxy supercluster. But even our supercluster is only one in thousands that make up what we call the observable universe. The universe might be 1 million times bigger, but we will never know. We could throw words around like 200 billion galaxies or trillions of stars or bazillions of planets, but all of these numbers mean nothing. Our brains can't comprehend these concepts. The universe is too big. There is too much of it. But size is not the most troubling concept we have to deal with. It's time, or more precisely, the time we have. If you're lucky enough to live to 100, you have 5,200 weeks at your disposal. If you're 25 now, then you have 3,900 weeks left. If you're going to die at 70, then there are 2,340 weeks left. A lot of time, but also not really. And then what? Your biological processes will break down, and the dynamic pattern that is you will stop being dynamic. It will dissolve until there is no you left. Some believe that there is a part of us we can't see or measure, but we have no way to find out. So this life might be it, and we might end up dead forever. This is less scary than it sounds, though. If you don't remember the 13.75 billion years that went by before you existed, then the trillions and trillions and trillions of years that come after will pass in no time once you're gone. Close your eyes. Count to 1. That's how long forever feels. And as far as we know, in the end, the universe itself will die and nothing will ever change again. Our videos induce existential dread in many people, and the last few minutes probably haven't helped. So for once we want to offer a different way of looking at these things, an unscientific, subjective point of view, the philosophy of Kurzgesagt if you want. Please take it with a grain of salt, we don't know any more about human existence than you do. We counter existential dread with optimistic nihilism. What do we mean by that? Well, to summarize, it seems very unlikely that 200 trillion stars have been made for us. In a way, it feels like the cruelest joke in existence has been played on us. We became self-aware only to realize this story is not about us. While it is great to know about electrons and the powerhouse of the cell, science doesn't do a lot to make this less depressing. Okay, but so what? You only get one shot at life, which is scary, but it also sets you free. If the universe ends in heat death, every humiliation you suffer in your life will be forgotten. Every mistake you made will not matter in the end. Every bad thing you did will be voided. If our life is all we get to experience, then it's the only thing that matters. If the universe has no principles, the only principles relevant are the ones we decide on. If the universe has no purpose, then we get to dictate what its purpose is. Humans will most certainly cease to exist at some point. But before we do, we get to explore ourselves and the world around us. We get to experience feelings. We get to experience food, books, sunrises, and being with each other. The fact that we're even able to think about these things is already kind of incredible. It's easy to think of ourselves as separated from everything, but this is not true. We are as much the universe as a neutron star, or a black hole, or a nebula. Even better actually, we are its thinking and feeling part, the sensory organs of the universe. We are truly free in a universe-sized playground. So we might as well aim to be happy and to build some kind of utopia in the stars. It's not as if we found out everything there is to know. We don't know why the rules of the universe are as they are, how life came into existence, what life is. We have no idea what consciousness is or if we are alone in the universe, but we can try to find some answers. There are billions of stars to visit, diseases to cure, people to help, happy feelings to be experienced, and video games to finish. There is so much to do. So wrapping up, you've probably used up a good chunk of the time available to you. If this is our one shot at life, there is no reason not to have fun and live as happily as possible. Bonus points if you make the life of other people better. More bonus points if you help build a galactic human empire. Do the things that make you feel good. You get to decide whatever this means for you. You were on your way home when you died. It was a car accident. Nothing particularly remarkable, but fatal nonetheless. It was a painless death. The medics tried their best to save you, but to no avail. Your body was so utterly shattered, you were better off, trust me. And that's when you met me. What happened? Where am I? You died, I said, matter-of-factly. No point in mincing words. There was a truck, and it was skidding. Yes. I died. Yes. But don't feel bad about it. Everyone dies. You looked around. There was nothingness. Just you and me. What is this place? Is this the afterlife? More or less. Are you God? Yes, I'm God. My kids? My wife? What about them? Will they be all right? That's what I like to see, I said. You just died and your main concern is for your family. That's good stuff right there. You looked at me with fascination. To you, I didn't look like God. I just looked like some man or possibly a woman. Some vague authority figure, maybe. Don't worry, I said. They'll be fine. Your kids will remember you as perfect in every way. They didn't have time to grow contemptuous of you. Your wife will cry on the outside, but will be secretly relieved. To be fair, your marriage was falling apart. If it's any consolation, she'll feel very guilty for feeling relieved. Oh, so what happens now? Do I go to heaven or hell or something? Neither. You'll be reincarnated. Ah. So the Hindus were right. All religions are right in their own way. Walk with me. You followed along as we strode through the void. Where are we going? Nowhere in particular. It's just nice to walk while we talk. So, what's the point then? When I get reborn, I'll just be a blank slate, right? A baby. So, all my experiences and everything I did in this life won't matter. Not so. You have within you all the knowledge and experiences of all your past lives. You just don't remember them right now. I stopped walking and took you by the shoulders. Your soul is more magnificent, beautiful, and gigantic than you can possibly imagine. A human mind can only contain a tiny fraction of what you are. It's like sticking your finger in a glass of water to see if it's hot or cold. You put a tiny part of yourself into the vessel, and when you bring it back out, you've gained all the experiences it had. You've been in a human for the last 48 years. so you haven't stretched out yet and felt the rest of your immense consciousness. If we hung out here for long enough, you'd start remembering everything. But there's no point to doing that between each life. How many times have I been reincarnated then? Oh, lots. Lots and lots. And into lots of different lives. This time around, you'll be a Chinese peasant girl in 540 AD. Wait, what? You're sending me back in time? Well, I guess technically, time as you know it only exists in your universe. Things are different where I come from. Where you come from? Oh, sure. I come from somewhere else. And there are others like me. I know you'll want to know what it's like there, but honestly, you wouldn't understand. Oh, you said, a little let down. But wait, if I get reincarnated to other places in time, I could have interacted with myself at some point. Sure, happens all the time. And with both lives only aware of their own lifespan, you don't even know it's happening. So, what's the point of it all? I looked you in the eye. The meaning of life, the reason I made this whole universe, is for you to mature. You mean mankind? You want us to mature? No, just you. I made this whole universe for you. With each new life, you grow and mature and become a larger and greater intellect. Just me? What about everyone else? There is no one else. In this universe, there's just you and me. You stared blankly at me. But all the people on Earth, all you, different incarnations of you. Wait, I'm everyone? Now you're getting it. I'm every human being who ever lived. Or who will ever live, yes. I'm Abraham Lincoln. And you're John Wilkes Booth too. I'm Hitler, you said, appalled. And you're the millions he killed. I'm Jesus. And you're everyone who followed him. You fell silent. Every time you victimized someone, you were victimizing yourself. Every act of kindness you've done to yourself. Every happy and sad moment ever experienced by any human was or will be experienced by you. You thought for a long time. Why? Why do all this? Because someday you will become like me. Because that's what you are. You're one of my kind. You're my child. Wow, you said, incredulous. You mean I'm a god? No, not yet. You're a fetus. You're still growing. Once you've lived every human life throughout all time, you will have grown enough to be born. So the whole universe, it's just an egg, I answered. Now it's time for you to move on to your next life. And I sent you on your way. Imagine someone coming into your kitchen and taking a few tools, a pan, and your garbage. Then they bury everything in the woods. 12,000 years later, an archaeologist is trying to figure out who you were, what was important to you, what video games you played, what you believed in, and what informed your decisions. Because you happened to live during a remarkable time in human history. The planetary revolution, when humanity transitioned, becoming a multi-planetary species. In that time, our numbers would explode by orders of magnitude. Our technology and standard of living would improve to levels previously thought impossible, and our self-conception would change forever. And all the future archaeologist has to learn about is your junk in the woods. While we can only hope that this will be someone's problem in 12,000 years, we have the same problem today. We're trying to reconstruct a revolution that took place 12,000 years ago. Today, only shadows remain of the people who experienced our distant past as their present. What remains from our past? We can look at our present in crispy 4K in color and sound. 3 generations ago, the world was just black and white. One more generation and we see the world through blurred photographs. Further back, paintings and texts become our main way of experiencing the past. A mere 20 generations before us today, every written word had to be copied by hand, and reports became more scarce and less reliable. The first historian lived a mere 100 generations ago. Before him, there are only epics and legends, and dead kings bragging on pieces of stone. 250 generations ago, there are only fragments left in the ground and images stripped of their original meaning. Eventually, humanity becomes basically invisible. Still, we do know some things about our ancestors. Let's try to tell their story and what it means for us today. The greatest transition in human history. For some 2 million years, or roughly 80,000 generations, the life of our ancestors was basically the same. It was around 20,000 years or 800 generations ago that the behaviorally modern humans began a process that would change our lifestyle forever. At first, gradually for some of us, then faster for more of us, and then suddenly for almost all of us. Back then, there were about 1 million modern humans on Earth. Most other human species had died out, probably with a little help from us. Our ancestors' biology had given them the necessary tools. A general intelligence to understand things, a social intelligence to understand each other, and language to express abstract ideas and create new concepts. These were people just like you. They suffered and experienced joy, were bored, cried, and laughed. They lived in communities of a few dozen people. They controlled fire and had tools made from wood, stone, and bone, told stories, mourned their dead, and created art. They traded with other tribes, from obsidian to shellfish. Some hunted big game and were very mobile, others relied more on plants they collected, and others mostly stayed in one area with an abundance of seafood. This was the common state of humanity for most of our history, until a slow transition, step by step, turned into a revolution. Step by step. The first solid evidence for this stems from the Jordan Valley, where our ancestors collected wild wheat more than 20,000 years ago. They noticed that seeds in the ground made more plants the next year. If they put good ones in one place, the next year they had more of the good ones. This was a great supplement to hunting and gathering. You could prepare some crops, return next year, build a temporary settlement, and have a secure food supply. Our ancestors used these bonus crops to bake the first bread and brew the first beer. With every generation, they gathered deeper knowledge about the plants and animals around them and how to manipulate them to their advantage. But there was a lot to learn. Very slowly, from generation to generation, pockets of knowledge expanded and were passed along to be expanded again. This early agriculture started to drastically reduce the space our ancestors needed to feed one individual, which made it possible to stay in one place longer. Around 12,000 years ago, these little pieces of progress had reached a critical mass. Most of the calories we consume today stem from about 15 different founder crops that humans began to domesticate in earnest in the next few thousand years. What we call the agricultural revolution was not a thing that began suddenly one day. It was a slow process driven by small groups over many generations. Eventually, gradual change gave rise to a new era. The human era. During the next few thousand years, progress would speed up and turn hunter-gatherers into farmers who lived in villages, towns, and then cities. When farmers moved into new areas, they replaced the nomadic tribes or turned them into farmers too. This was neither easy nor painless. In the early days, people had a diverse diet made up of up to 250 different plants and animals. For some of the groups transitioning to agriculture, the variation in their diets declined drastically, and some even seemed to have been undernourished. And living close together and with animals created a breeding ground for disease. Virtually every infectious disease caused by microorganisms that have adapted to humans arose in the last 10,000 years. Cholera, smallpox, measles, influenza, chickenpox, and malaria. Mortality, especially among children, rose drastically. Still, our numbers grew because living in the same place enabled women to bear far more children than before, and for a farmer, more kids mean more hands to work the fields. Even with more people dying younger, villages and towns grew. The number of humans on Earth exploded. About 100 generations after the beginning of the human era, there were already 4 million of us. This increased the need for food and forced people to come up with ever more efficient ways of producing calories, solidifying our new lifestyle. Going back to hunting and gathering would have just meant death by starvation for most. One question remains unanswered. Why? Why would people exchange the freedom of living off nature with a huge variety in food for the grind of agriculture and often more limited diets? Nobody knows for sure. Climate change seems to have made the transition possible, and some scientists argue that it was caused by external factors like undernourishment or overpopulation, both highly contested. Today, the most widely accepted idea is that it was a deliberate choice made by countless communities around the globe. Maybe it's also connected with what makes us human: the ability to come together, develop shared identities, and exchange stories and knowledge. Some archaeologists think that groups of hunter-gatherers traveled long and far to celebrate, to hold feasts and rituals. They would have used these occasions to talk about their version of innovation, better hunting and tool-making techniques, how to catch and breed animals, and which plants could be collected and multiplied. Maybe they even exchanged seeds. It's not unlikely that these gatherings were the catalyst that spread the knowledge of agriculture through the many isolated groups of humanity, ultimately ending a lifestyle that was common to our species for thousands of generations. So by being able to come together, celebrate, share, and learn from one another, these humans might have taken the steps that led to our modern world, and we have much to be grateful for. We are still the same humans today, even if it often doesn't feel that way. Maybe it's time to come together to share what we know and celebrate our existence once again, to begin another peaceful transition, maybe the planetary revolution that will change everything once more. So, hopefully, in another 12,000 years, our descendants will look back on us today with gratitude for the amazing world they are able to inhabit. Humans are proud of a lot of things, from particle accelerators to poetry to Pokemon. All of them made possible because of something humans value extremely highly: intelligence. We think of intelligence as a trait like height or strength, but when we try to define it, things get fuzzy. In a nutshell, intelligence is a mechanism to solve problems, especially the problem of staying alive, which involves finding food and shelter, fighting sexual competitors, or fleeing from predators. Intelligence is not a single thing. It includes the ability to gather knowledge, to learn, be creative, form strategies, or engage in critical thinking. It manifests itself in a huge variety of behaviors, from hardwired or instinct-like reactions to different degrees of learning to some sort of awareness. But not all scientists agree where it begins or what even should count as intelligence. To make this even more complicated, intelligence is also connected to consciousness, since awareness is helpful for problem solving. But we're exploring consciousness in other videos, so today we'll leave it aside. Okay, intelligence isn't exactly clear-cut, so maybe we can think of it as more like a flexible set of skills, a toolbox. Basic tools. The most basic tools in the intelligence toolbox are the ability to gather information, to save it, and to use it to learn. Information about the world is gathered through senses such as vision, sound, smell, touch, or taste, and helps us navigate and react to the external world appropriately. But living things also need to keep track of the state of their own bodies, monitoring things like hunger and fatigue. Information is the basis of action for all living things, and without it, you're at the mercy of your surroundings, unable to react appropriately or flexibly. Information is much more powerful if we can keep and save it. So the second tool is memory. Memory is the ability to save and recall information so a living being doesn't have to start from scratch every time it perceives something relevant. Memories can be about events, places and associations, but also behaviors like hunting or foraging methods. Some of these, like flying, have to be repeated over and over until they're mastered. This is what we call learning, the process of putting together a sequence of thoughts or actions. Basically a string of repeatable behaviors that can be varied and adapted. These three tools enable seemingly stupid creatures to act in surprisingly intelligent ways. The acellular slime mold, which is basically just a single huge slimy cell, shows behavior similar to an animal with a simple brain. When put in a maze with food at one end, the slime mold explores its surroundings and marks its path with slime trails, sort of smearing memories on the ground. As it continues exploring, it avoids the marked pathways and finds its way to the food. Instead of blindly getting stuck in dead ends, the slime mold adapts its behavior to save time and effort. This behavior is hardwired, and scientists can't agree if that's intelligent, although it does give the slime mold a certain advantage. Bees are an example of more adaptive smart behavior. Scientists trained bumblebees to move a colored ball into a goalpost for a sugar reward. Not only were the bees very skillful at this behavior, which isn't natural to them, they got more efficient over time. When several balls were available, bees chose the ball that lay closest to the goal, even if it was a different color than the ball they were trained with. For more challenging problems, we need even more flexibility. Fancier tools. Building on the basic tools, more complex animals have a wider range of problems they can solve. They can memorize all kinds of associations, connections, and mechanical tricks. We'll call this tool the Library of Knowledge. Take raccoons. Their favorite kind of food is human food. Their approach to getting hold of such treats depends upon an assortment of theoretical and practical skills that makes them master burglars, able to open windows or pick locks. In a study, raccoons were given boxes secured with different kinds of locks, like latches, bolts, plugs, or push bars. They needed less than 10 attempts to figure out how to open each box, even when different locks were put together into increasingly difficult combinations that had to be solved in the right order and with different amounts of strength. A year later, the raccoons still remembered how to open the boxes and were as fast as when they had first solved the puzzle. Beyond our library of associations and skills, the most impressive tool in our box is creativity, a sort of mental duct tape. Being creative means producing something new and valuable from apparently unrelated things. In the context of intelligence, this means making new and unusual connections, pairing input with memories and skills to come up with a unique solution to a problem. In another raccoon study, researchers showed the animals that by dropping pebbles into a water tank, they could raise the water level enough to reach a marshmallow floating at the top. One raccoon came up with a much better solution. It tipped the tub over. Another facet of creativity is applying a new resource to a task: physical tools. Like primates that use sticks to fish for termites in trees, or some octopuses which assemble collected coconut shells around themselves as a sort of portable armor to hide from enemies. Collecting materials for later use is connected to an even more advanced dimension of problem solving: planning. Planning means considering the activities required for a desired goal and putting them together in a plan. When unforeseen circumstances and new possibilities present themselves, they need to be assessed according to whether they match the plan or not. An example of this intelligent behavior is hoarding food to eat it later. This is an instinctive behavior in squirrels. But even though hiding food comes instinctively to them, they still need to use advanced thinking skills to make the best decisions. Squirrels examine every nut and weigh the time and effort it would take to hide it against the benefits they would get from each one. Damaged or low-fat nuts are eaten right away, while nuts that still need to ripen go on the stockpile. Squirrels also pretend to bury nuts when they feel watched. These empty caches distract rivals from their real treasure. This is pretty advanced strategizing because to make a plan to distract someone else, you first have to be aware that there are others like you that want the same things. The more complex the problem, the more tools are needed in combination to solve it. So the more tools there are, the more flexibility a being has to solve the challenges life throws at them. But even for complex problems, each animal's individual situation is what counts. Squirrels are omnivores that defend their territories fiercely. For them, it makes sense to remember where there's food in different locations and trick their enemies to improve their chances of survival. Sheep don't have any such refined tricks up their sleeve, but they don't need to. They are grazers and live in flocks. The skills relevant to them are social. They recognize and remember many different sheep and even humans for years, a completely different skill. Evolving and retaining a complex set of mental abilities they might never use would be a waste of resources for them. Humans went the opposite way and invested in an unusually diverse intelligence toolkit. While this was helpful, by accident we added another set of tools on top: culture. No single person could ever build a space rocket or particle accelerator. But thanks to our ability to work together and to share knowledge across generations, we can overcome challenges beyond any single individual's ability. This allowed us to shape the planet to our liking. We also created new problems in the process: Sudoku, tax forms, string theory, but also rapid climate change and antibiotic resistance. To solve these, we'll need to look past short-term survival and think about the distant future. We have the toolbox. We just need to use it. We humans are unable to experience the true nature of the universe unfiltered. Our senses and brains can only process a fraction of the world. So we have to use concepts and tools to learn about the true nature of reality. Technological progress not only widened our knowledge about the universe, it also made us aware of unsettling possibilities. In the future, it might become possible to simulate entire universes. But if this is an option, how can we know that it's not already happened? What if we are not creators, but creations? Is it possible that we are not real and we don't even know it? If our current understanding of physics is correct, then it's impossible to simulate the whole universe with its trillions and trillions of things. But we don't actually need to anyway. We only need enough universe to fool the inhabitants of our simulation into thinking that they're real. Who needs billions of galaxies? We only need the space our subjects are allowed to explore.
The vast universe could just be a flat projection, and they would have no way to know.
What about small things like cells or bacteria? We don't really need them. When you use a microscope, what you see could be instantly created. Same with atoms. The chair you're sitting on right now does not need to be simulated with quadrillions of atoms. We just need the outermost layer of it. It might be empty inside until you decide to break it open. Your body might feel like it's filled with bubbly things, but it might be empty until you open it. The minimum requirement for our simulation is only the consciousness of our virtual humans. Our subjects just need to think the simulation is real. Okay, so are we being simulated? Well, maybe, but there are a few conditions that need to be met. Obviously, we have no authority over this topic, so please take everything we say with a grain of salt. Based on a modified version of the original simulation argument by Nick Bostrom, we have 5 assumptions for you. If they're true, you, dear viewer, are living in a simulation. Assumption 1. It's possible to simulate consciousness. Nobody knows what consciousness is. For the sake of argument, let's assume that you could generate consciousness by simulating a brain. Brains are pretty complex.
If you count every interaction between synapses as one operation, your brain runs at about 10 to the power of 17, or 100 million billion operations per second. Let's generously assume we need 10 to the power of 20 operations to simulate 1 second of human consciousness. But we don't want to simulate just one human, we want to simulate all of human history at once so we can skip around. Let's say we want to simulate 200 billion humans with an average lifespan of 50 years. 1 year has 30 million seconds, times 50 years, times 200 billion humans, times 10 to the power of 20 operations.
So we need a computer able to handle 1,000,000 trillion operations per second. More operations than there are stars in the observable universe. A computer like this is just impossible. Except maybe it isn't. Assumption 2. Technological progress will not stop anytime soon. If we assume that technological progress continues in a similar fashion as it has so far, then there might be galaxy-spanning civilizations with unlimited computer power at some point. Beings on a technology level so advanced that we could barely distinguish them from gods. A computer that can handle 1,000,000 trillion operations is serious business, but there are actually concepts for computers which could handle this. The Matryoshka brain is a theoretical megastructure made up of billions of parts orbiting a star feeding on its radiation. A computer of this scale would have enough power to simulate many thousands, if not millions, of humanities at the same time. Other technologies, like high-end future quantum computers, might lower the size drastically, so it might be possible to do this with a structure the size of a large city, or even smaller. But only if there's still someone around to build the computer. Assumption 3. Advanced civilizations don't destroy themselves. If there is a point at which all civilizations destroy themselves, this whole discussion ends here. Looking into space, you'd expect a universe filled with millions of alien civilizations, but we see nobody. The reason for this might be great filters. Great filters are barriers life has to overcome, like nuclear war, asteroids, climate change, or a black hole generator. If life is inherently self-destructive, then there are no simulations. We explain this in more detail in our Fermi paradox video. Assumption 4. Super-advanced civilizations want to run simulations. When we speak of post-human civilizations, we don't know what we're dealing with. To think we know what beings as powerful as gods want is pretty arrogant. Imagine the smartest ant on Earth living next to an amusement park. It's curious about what humans are up to, so you try to explain. Unfortunately, the ant just doesn't understand. The concept of roller coasters and standing in lines and holidays and fun doesn't make sense to an ant living an ant life. It's the same with us and a post-human being. Compared to them, we are ants. Running simulations for fun or science might be an absurdly stupid idea to them. But if they do want to run simulations for whatever reasons, and assumptions 1 to 3 are true too, then the chances are not zero that you are living inside a simulation. Assumption 5. If there are a lot of simulations, you are probably inside a simulation. If there are simulated civilizations, it's likely that there are a lot of them. After all, we assume that post-human beings have access to practically unlimited computing power. So if they run simulations, it would be convenient to run millions or even billions of them. If there are billions of simulated universes, there are probably trillions and trillions of simulated conscious beings, which would mean that the vast majority of all conscious beings that will ever have existed are simulated. So for every conscious being made of flesh, 1 billion simulated ones exist.
Since we have no way of knowing if we are simulated or not, in this case, the chances of you being one of the 999,999,999 simulated ones are pretty high. So what you consider reality might not be real at all. You really might be simulated.
All of this is based on a lot of assumptions that we can't really test right now, so many scientists disagree with this whole thought experiment. So don't burn your house down to test if there will be glitches. If you are simulated, not that much changes for you. You might be on a small planet speeding through eternal nothingness, or a simulation inside a computer. Your existence does not become more or less scary and bizarre. All we can hope to do is try to live good lives and have a good time. And hope that if we actually are simulations in a supercomputer, nobody trips over the power cable. You might be unkillable, impossible to delete out of existence, if one of the most exciting ideas about physics, quantum immortality, is true. To test this idea, we'll put a nuclear bomb in your living room, but more on that later. This is real science happening around one of the most successful theories of physics. To understand why, we need to tell you a story. The story of the smallest parts in the universe, atoms and fundamental particles. With everyday objects, things intuitively make sense. If you kick a marble 10 times with the same force and at the same angle, it always lands in the same spot. But if you kick an electron 10 times exactly the same way, it shows up in different places. On the most fundamental level of reality, randomness is the rule. The story that solves this is called quantum mechanics. Simplified, it goes something like this. A particle like an electron is not like a tiny marble, but like a shapeshifter, a diffuse thing we call a wave that ebbs and flows. But to make it much weirder, it's not a wave of matter or energy, but a wave of probability, an immaterial essence that has values between 0% and 100%. What does that even mean? Quantum mechanics doesn't really tell us much about the electron. It only tells us how this entity that we call an electron behaves on average. Say you shoot an electron gun at your apartment. You shoot it 100 times. 80 times the electron shows up in your living room and 20 times in your kitchen. So the probability wave of our electron is 80% in the living room and 20% in the kitchen. What's deeply annoying is that this story of probability waves works insanely well in reality. It's not just some brainchild that only works on paper. Scientists have tested it in countless experiments, and it works every single time. It explains how a lot of real things work, from information passing through microchips to the atoms fusing in the center of stars. And yet, how can this story make sense? All of our other scientific stories give us a mental picture of the things they're describing: a sphere of iron at the center of Earth, an elastic fabric of space. But a wave of probability, what's that even supposed to look like? Quantum mechanics doesn't tell us anything about the electron itself, what it looks like, how it moves, or how it tastes. But if our story doesn't describe the electrons themselves, what does it describe, and how does it potentially make you immortal? What is the quantum story really about? Scientists have been debating this for a century. They've come up with tons of ideas we can't cover here, but there are two popular schools of thought. We'll call them linguists and literary critics. They're screaming and arguing over what the quantum story really means. The position of the linguists is shut up and calculate. They basically claim that quantum mechanics is not a story about reality, but just a kind of grammar for the theoretical language of the universe. With this language, we can predict experiments. Nothing else. If there is no story, there's no point in asking what the story says about the electron. Whether electrons are tiny marbles or clouds, waves of negative charge, or Detective Pikachu is missing the point. Quantum mechanics doesn't enable you to visualize any electrons. All you can do is to run experiments. And physics is all about experiments, not about creating mental pictures for us. So shut up, stop imagining fairy tales, and just use the probability wave to calculate things. Follow the grammar, ignore the plot. No, scream the literary critics. Read between the lines. There's a hidden meaning here. They are many worldlians, and they're convinced that quantum mechanics is a story about reality, and they want to interpret the story. The many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics is not the same as the multiverse, by the way, which is a whole different can of worms, but we'll get to that another time. The many worldlians think that the universe is an infinitely complex quantum state, where all physically possible outcomes coexist simultaneously. If the probability wave of your electron is split 80% to 20% between your living room and the kitchen, that means that the electron is split in a similar way. That there are 5 versions of the electron, 4 of them are going to the living room, and 1 to the kitchen. But it isn't just the electron that splits. You are observing the electron, so there are 5 versions of you too. 4 of them see the electron in the living room and 1 in the kitchen. Each of these different versions of you and the electron are equally real, equally true, and all of them exist at this moment in your house. But they can't communicate or interact in any way, so they're totally invisible to each other, which means that whoever you are right now, You are just one of your versions experiencing just one thing, either seeing the electron in the living room or in the kitchen. Many worlds means that all physically possible worlds are coexisting right here, right now, but independently of each other like the branches of a tree. And there are a lot of them. Every possible quantum process means there are other possible worlds. A radioactive atom decays, another world exists where it didn't. A cosmic ray hits one of your cells, another world exists where the ray just passed through. Each second, bazillions upon bazillions of new worlds exist on top of each other. Stop it, shout the linguists. If these worlds can't interact with each other, we can't check whether they exist. This is not science, so please shut up and calculate. Wait, there is a way to find out. But to do it, you'll have to die a few hundred times. And maybe prove that you're immortal. The ultimate experiment. All we need are 2 electron detectors connected to a nuclear bomb in your living room. If the detector in your living room is activated, the nuke explodes. If the one in the kitchen is activated, you're safe. Now sit on the nuke and have your brave assistant shoot the electron gun. There are 2 ways this can go. There's a 20% chance the electron lands in the kitchen and you survive, and an 80% chance you die. Okay, let's shoot. Beep. Oh, lucky you. The electron landed in the kitchen. Let's try once more. Beep. And once again. Beep. And another 100 times. Beep, 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 beep. If there is only one universe, you'll die fairly soon. Sooner rather than later, the electron will trigger the nuke and you'll be instantly vaporized. But if the many worlds interpretation is true, then every time your assistant shoots the gun, there are 5 versions of you and 4 instantly die. Only one of your versions is alive, and there's only one thing you can experience: your survival. It doesn't matter how many times you try. From your perspective, you'll survive every time. At first, it will seem like luck, but at some point, your luck will become near impossible. In a universe with just one reality, your odds of surviving 100 times in a row are about 1 in 10 duovigintillion, a 1 followed by 70 zeros. So, if you did the experiment 100 times and you're still here, the universe just whispered its deepest secret to you. Yes, you killed hundreds of versions of yourself, but you now know for sure that the many worlds are true, because you are still here experiencing things, and that you're kind of immortal. Okay, well, all that might be a bit overwhelming. Let's break it down again. The cosmic secret. If every possible quantum process always happens in some branch, then this doesn't only mean that there are almost, but not quite, infinite versions of you, but there's always a you that gets insanely lucky. A tumor starts, but a cosmic ray kills it before it spreads. A bolt of lightning strikes at you, but a quantum fluke makes it miss by a meter. A washing machine falls from a roof, but all its atoms quantum tunnel through your body. No matter how extremely high the likelihood is that you'll die, there may always be a branch in which you survive. So, should you start wingsuit flying today? Well, not so fast. For every version of you that survives, bazillions don't. And all those versions of you are just as real as you are right now watching this video. So if you care about the current version of yourself, you should care just as much about all the versions still waiting to be and their loved ones. In other words, if you see a washing machine falling, better move away and save as many of your versions as you can. The more universes exist with you in them, the better. Your existence makes the universe richer. And there's another good reason to move. While the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics feels beautiful and elegant, that doesn't make it true. We don't know if it's true, and so far no literary critic sat on a nuke to risk being wrong. If the shut up and calculate people are right, there is just one world, just one version of you. And if the washing machine hits you, you are done for. But wouldn't this be nice to know? If the many worlds idea is true, then no matter how unlucky you get, you will always know that somewhere you are lucky. Stress is an ancient superpower that's slowly killing you. It evolved as one of the most powerful tools for survival, but has turned into a double-edged sword in the modern world. It grants your wish to rise to a gnarly challenge or to work harder, but claims a chunk of your life force in return. Unless you learn how to use it right. What is stress? Why is it harmful? And what can you do to escape its consequences? All living things strive for homeostasis, a state where their body is in balance. To maintain this balance, they make adjustments like moving into the sunlight or eating nutrients. But the world is a cruel place with death lurking behind every corner, and organisms need a way to react to extreme situations. This is how stress evolved, as a physical response to a stressor, which is anything challenging or dangerous. Stress is a very fast, drastic change of the state of the body that prioritizes survival. An emergency program that lets the organism push way out of its comfort zone to survive. To understand how stress works in humans, let's visit a scene 50,000 years ago. The superpower awakens. A group of early Homo sapiens are huddled around a fire when suddenly a desperate and starving saber-toothed tiger attacks their camp. Their leader, the bear smasher, jumps up as time slows down. His brain classifies the tiger as a critical stressor and unleashes the stress response. Adrenal glands pump out adrenaline that rushes through body, activating fight or flight mode. His heart starts beating faster and his lungs accelerate, providing an emergency supply of nutrients and oxygen to all critical systems. Adrenaline dictates that his muscles have energy priority over his other organs and activates them for rapid action. Their strength and speed are ramped up. Pain and fatigue signals are muted while his senses become super sharp and lock in on the threat. Perceives every detail with maximum clarity and realizes the tiger is getting ready to pounce. There's only a split second to react. Adrenaline forces to make a quick, impulsive decision. Without thinking about it, he chooses to fight and attacks with full force. But the battle is long and arduous. The animal is desperate and will not back down. Our humans risk exhaustion. A new hormone joins the battle, cortisol. Cortisol is the slower, more strategic hormone that manages a longer stress response. It orders a total shift of all body systems, ramping up the fuel supply while suppressing all non-essential functions like resting, disease defense, or digestion. Ur's body isn't his own anymore, it belongs to stress. Finally, the bear smasher deals the killing blow. The tribe gathers in celebration. Their bodies shut down fight or flight and activate rest and digest. Wounds begin to hurt and muscles cry in exhaustion. It's time to recover and heal, bond and tell stories about how they killed the angry tiger god. Some fall asleep, others eat to replenish. The tribe relaxes and homeostasis is being restored. These people are your ancestors. When did this amazing superpower turn into a curse? The deadly email. Our world has changed so quickly and profoundly that our biology couldn't keep up. Stress is still the same it was 50,000 years ago. Sense a stressor, react immediately and with full force, prioritize present moment survival, make sacrifices if necessary. That works well when you have to jump out of the way of a car. But most stressors we encounter nowadays are abstract, acute, and more numerous, often intangible, persist for much longer, and usually don't even require physical action. The tigers of the past are now angry emails, deadlines, online dating, rush hour traffic, or doom scrolling the news and social media. But our brains are built to take fear very seriously, so if you experience even a short burst of anxiety over an email, or because you scrolled through Twitter, the helping hand of stress springs to action. You can have dozens of these micro-stressors per day, constantly activating your stress response, even if you barely notice anymore. While these micro-threats stack up, we also have to deal with bigger stressors like unpaid overtime, angry clients, rising rents, inflation and healthcare, or tariffs and chaos making our future more uncertain. But the boost we get from stress can also be extremely helpful if you have to study for an exam, run a marathon, or complete a big project. It's a proper superpower and can feel exhilarating, even addictive. So many of us end up abusing it. Especially if you work in a competitive field, you may keep pushing and challenging yourselves and others, relying on stress to get your best performance possible. The problem is that stress was only ever intended to be used in short spurts and critical situations. If it's activated over days, weeks, and months with no release, it becomes chronic stress, one of the deadliest conditions for humans. How chronic stress destroys you. The price of chronic stress is the slow destruction of every part of your body and brain. As the stress cascade is activated over and over, adrenaline and cortisol keep flooding your body. Your fight-or-flight systems are overactivated, while your rest and digest functions are constantly suppressed. Your muscles tense up for a fight that never comes. Instead, your back, shoulders, and neck scream under the tension, and you get pounding headaches. Your digestive tract cramps and suffers, either holding things in too long or rushing things out. Your fat metabolism is disrupted and starts slowing down fat breakdown, while increasing fat buildup in your belly area. Your cells become less responsive to insulin, increasing your risk of metabolic diseases. Your heart keeps pounding, eager to supply your body with fuel, but your blood vessels aren't built for this constant overactivation and get destroyed in the process, massively increasing your risk of a heart attack or stroke. Your immune system gets weaker and stronger at the same time, in a way that causes maximum damage to you. The parts that protect you from disease are suppressed because who cares about a cold if you have to fight a tiger? This increases your risk of infections, cancer, and autoimmune diseases. Meanwhile, cells that cause inflammation for wound healing are massively boosted, inflaming your tissue all over. Your brain gets rewired to serve stress. Perceiving an ongoing critical emergency, it slows down calm reflection and thinking, instead favoring quick and rapid reactions. You literally get worse at thinking clearly and lose wisdom points. You're much more likely to make bad, impulsive decisions like breaking up, eating junk food, or using drugs. You become worse at solving your problems while creating new ones. Under chronic stress, you're simply a worse version of yourself. If this persists, your memory and cognitive abilities get worse as you slide into anxiety and depression. So your chances of getting out of a stressful situation in the modern world worsen the longer you're chronically stressed. A hellish, vicious circle. If you can't escape it, odds are that you may die earlier and suffer greatly along the way. How to use stress as intended. Stress can be your friend. In measured doses, acute stress enables you to conquer mountains and push beyond your comfort zone, helps you to improve your skills and grow as a person. And it can make it feel amazing to perform at your very best. But to get the good without the bad, it's critical that you properly wind down your fight or flight response and relax. Listen to your body. If you feel stressed, you are stressed, full stop. There's no universal threshold you have to reach before you're allowed to do something about it. Next, ask yourself, is your stress response productive in your situation, and is there an end in sight? If you're studying for exams or moving house, stress is a superpower, helping you unlock your full potential. But your health needs breaks from fight or flight mode, be it meeting friends, working out, or going for a walk in nature. Relaxation is not being lazy, this is serious self-care. If you relax actively and regularly, you'll keep stress from claiming a price on your body and mind and still be able to use its power. If you can't do this at the moment, plan active relaxation time as soon as you can, without this stressing you out. Okay, but what if you suffer from constant unhelpful stress? You can't control your body's stress response, but you can influence it. As annoying as this is, mindfulness, like meditation or yoga, is scientifically proven to take the edge off stressful situations and to tell your brain that this email is not a deadly tiger. But the single most effective way to remove stress from your life is to remove the stressor itself. Become your own personal assistant and assess where tiny bursts of stress are coming from during your day. Do you feel stressed when you doom scroll? Social media doesn't show us what we want, but what makes us engage. And negative emotions make us engage the most. So simply getting rid of the apps or unfollowing stressful people can actually remove a lot of stress from your life. Especially with the really big problems, removing the stressor is extremely effective. If you live in a dangerous neighborhood, move. If you're bullied at school, see if you can change your environment. While this is drastic advice and may not be easy, it will have the biggest impact on your chronic stress levels. So think about what you can change in the midterm. Of course, there are situations where you can't just eliminate the stressor or meditate the chronic stress away. If your brain is stuck in stress mode for too long, it will get worse and worse at solving problems. You may not be able to think clearly to get out of your situation. In these cases, the most powerful move is to ask for help. Open up to friends or family, or get professional help. An extra pair of hands can make a huge difference. In the end, life will throw stresses your way. This is unavoidable. And that's okay. Stress is your superpower. Use it. But never forget to get to the other side of it. A 3-story building is about 10 meters tall, 6 times bigger than you. In the opposite direction, 6 times smaller than you get things like a cute squirrel, about 27 centimeters small. So the building is just as big relative to you as you are to a squirrel. You're in the middle. It's easy to understand. In fact, you are in the middle of everything in the universe. Let's go on a fantastical journey together to the small and the large and see if it's really true. An A320 is 37 meters long. The roofer's hummingbird is around 7 centimeters. Both of these flyers are 23 times bigger or smaller than you, and both fly intercontinental distances. The tiny bird migrates between Alaska and Mexico. If the hummingbird were the same size as the jet, it would circle the Earth 85 times every year. Dinoponera, the largest ant in the world, is about 55 times smaller than you. Their small colonies have around 100 individuals but no queens. Instead, they ruthlessly compete for status within the nest, which can reach 1.2 meters deep. If humans lived like Dinoponera, we'd be building towers of over 25 stories filled with offices and ruthlessly competing for status. And wait. The deadliest and most annoying insect in the world is the mosquito, 235 times smaller than you, while on the other end, the Empire State Building is about that much larger than you. Kind of unimaginable how something this small creates so much devastation for something that big. We're getting to the borders of human perception now. Like coarse grains of sand about 3 millimeters, 550 times smaller than you. You can feel their shape and roughness between your fingers, and if you focus, see them individually. We mix them into concrete that can hold up the tallest towers ever built, like the 828-meter tall Burj Khalifa that's 500 times larger than you. If you were that tall, people would be as small to you as grains of sand in your hand. Hey, be gentle. Anything smaller or bigger, and it becomes hard to grasp. A medium-sized city like Lisbon is about 6,000 times larger than yourself and permeated by a network of highways, roads, and alleys. On the other end, about 6,000 times smaller than you, are your small arteries permeating your whole body. Actually, you're in the middle between your network of blood vessels and the network of a city like Lisbon. If you think of a city as a living being, you find more and more parallels. A small alley is as small to the city as an arteriole 0.1 millimeters wide is to you. Your tiniest capillaries are to you what the pipes bringing water to homes are to Lisbon. Going further, 100,000 times smaller than you, we reach a typical skin cell about 30 micrometers in diameter. A neutrophil is half as big, and one of your red blood cells is merely 7 micrometers. They are as small to you as you are to the entire Tokyo metropolitan area, the largest urban area in the world spanning over 160 kilometers. You are so incredibly big, filled with so much complexity, so many different moving parts. Or are you just a cell in the human civilization's superstructure? Are you both? Our steps are getting larger and larger now. Germany is around 875 kilometers from north to south and the 4th biggest agricultural exporter in the world. Rhizobia is a nitrogen-fixing bacteria up to 3 micrometers long, and without it, that sort of agricultural production is impossible. So we have a country and a bacterium depending on each other, and you are in the middle, both being roughly 550,000 times larger or smaller than you. What about the whole Earth? It's about 12,700 kilometers in diameter, about 7.7 million times larger than you. On the other side of the scale is Corynebacterium, as little as 0.3 micrometers across, living on your skin and eyes along with 100 billion other bacteria, more than 10 times more than there are humans on Earth. Again, you're in the center, right in the middle of something so large that our civilization is a mere scratch on its surface, and something so small and numerous you never notice its presence even as it touches you. Does that make you feel small or big? From here on out, your brain is breaking a bit. 4 times wider than Earth is Neptune, a cold blue gas giant 49,500 kilometers wide. The largest planet, though, is Jupiter, 140,000 kilometers in diameter. A titanic abyss shrouded in terrible winds. You could drop Earth whole into its depths and it would simply vanish. On the opposite scale, we find the deadly West Nile virus, 50 nanometers in diameter. Or one step down, the spike proteins on a coronavirus that open up cells for its RNA payload. They are as small to you as you are to the planet Jupiter. You are in the middle between gigantic planets and the world of viruses. These tiny things. So deadly. Let that sink in. A tiny virus is taking over and killing lung cells up to 500 times larger than itself with the help of a tiny protein weapon. That's like you trying to kill a giant the size of the Burj Khalifa with a screwdriver. But the real boss of the solar system is the Sun. 10 times bigger than Jupiter, a billion times larger than you, controlling all the planets and source of all energy that drives life. A billion times smaller than you, clearly the boss of our body, is a DNA strand containing all the information making your life possible. You're right in the middle between the most important factors keeping everything alive. From here on, things just kind of stop making sense. A billion is already too much, but now everything just seems to mean a lot. The supermassive black hole at the center of our galaxy, Sagittarius A star, is 14.5 billion times bigger than you. A hydrogen atom is 15.5 billion times smaller than you. Yeah, okay, sure. But the thing is, we're not even close to being done, and it's not impossible to get at least a sense of how these scale. The solar system is 22 trillion times larger than you. On the other end of the scale is the wavelength of low-energy neutrinos released from fusion reactions in our Sun. About 100 trillion of them are passing through you every single second, like ghosts a trillion times smaller than you, basically never hitting any of the particles inside you. If you moved through the solar system in a straight line, you probably wouldn't hit anything either. Although things are beginning to get really weird now. A single proton at the heart of the hydrogen atom is almost exactly 1 quadrillion times smaller than you. If the proton were as big as you, the hydrogen atoms would be taller than 12 Mount Everests. On the other end, we meet something that just breaks human brains, the incredible vastness of space. We just have no reference for these distances at all. The distance to the closest star to Earth, Alpha Centauri, is not 1 quadrillion times in the other direction from the tiny proton, but 24 quadrillion. Space is just so large, it's kind of mean. And it goes on like this. A quintillion times smaller than you is the strange world of the quarks. The proton is not actually like a tiny ball, but kind of just a ripple on the surface of the ocean of quarks. Every moment, countless quarks pop into existence, along with their antiparticle enemies, before doing furious battle and annihilating each other in an instant. How many? Impossible to say, because the harder you look for them, the more quarks seem to appear. We're simplifying so much it's like a lie anyway. However we choose to illustrate this, it's wrong. What actually is a quark? What does it look like to human minds? Nobody knows. As you sit here confused, let's look up again. The ocean of quarks in a proton inside a single atom of a single cell of your body is as small to you as you are compared to a sphere around 174 light-years across, containing about 16,000 stars. And this is just a tiny speck of dust to our galaxy. The Milky Way is close to 1 sextillion times larger than you. At the opposite end, we have particles a sextillion times smaller than yourself, like the wavelength of high-energy neutrinos released when cosmic rays hit our atmosphere. We're getting to the end. The observable universe is 93 billion light-years in diameter, close to a billion human lengths. But it's still finite. It's only 465,000 Milky Ways side by side. If you were the size of our galaxy, the observable universe would only be a day's drive across. On the other end of that scale, we have the tiniest particle ever detected, a proton traveling so close to the speed of light it got squished into a pancake. As small compared to you as the whole observable universe is big to you. We're at the border of things that we have evidence for. Are you truly in the middle of everything? The theoretical smallest physical distance is the Planck length, 100 million times smaller than even the pancake proton. But we don't know if it's real, only that our theories of the universe break down here. Likewise, on the other end, does the bigness of the universe match the smallness of the Planck length? Well, actually, the universe could be considerably larger than that, but we will never know. Let's go back and look at the dimensions again. There are so many big things and so many small things wrapped up in them. The universe seems to be exactly the right size, with you in the middle. If you saw a wormhole in reality, it would appear round, spherical, a bit like a black hole. Light from the other side passes through and gives you a window to a faraway place. Once crossed, the other side comes fully into view, with your old home now receding into that shimmering spherical window. But are wormholes real, or are they just magic disguised as physics and maths? If they are real, how do they work, and where can we find them? For most of human history, we thought space was pretty simple, a big flat stage where the events of the universe unfold. Even if you take down the set of planets and stars, there's still something left. That empty stage is space, and it exists, unchanging and eternal. Einstein's theory of relativity changed that. It says that space and time make up that stage together, and they aren't the same everywhere. The things on the stage can affect the stage itself, stretching and warping it. If the old stage was like unmoving hardwood, Einstein's stage is more like a waterbed. This kind of elastic space can be bent and maybe even torn and patched together, which could make wormholes possible. Let's see what that would look like in 2D. Our universe is like a big flat sheet. Bent in just the right way, wormholes could connect two very, very distant spots with a short bridge that you could cross almost instantaneously, enabling you to travel the universe even faster than the speed of light. So, where can we find a wormhole? Presently, only on paper. General relativity says they might be possible, but that doesn't mean they have to exist. General relativity is a mathematical theory. It's a set of equations that have many possible answers, but not all maths describes reality. But they are theoretically possible, and there are different kinds. The first kind of wormholes to be theorized were Einstein-Rosen bridges. They describe every black hole as a sort of portal to an infinite parallel universe. Let's try to picture them in 2D again. Empty space-time is flat, but curved by objects on it. If we compress that object, space-time gets more curved around it. Eventually, space-time becomes so warped that it has no choice but to collapse into a black hole. A one-way barrier forms, the event horizon, which anything can enter, but nothing can escape, trapped forever at the singularity at its core. But maybe there is no singularity here. One possibility is that the other side of the event horizon looks a bit like our universe again, but mirrored upside down, where time runs backwards. In our universe, things fall into the black hole. In the parallel universe with backwards time, the mirror black hole is spewing things out a bit like a Big Bang. This is called a white hole. Unfortunately, Einstein-Rosen bridges can't actually be crossed. It takes an infinite amount of time to cross over to the opposite universe, and they crimp shut in the middle. If you go into a black hole, you won't become the stuff coming out of the white hole. You'll only become dead. So, to travel the cosmos in the blink of an eye, humans need a different kind of wormhole, a traversable wormhole. If string theory, or one of its variations, is the correct description of our universe, then we could be lucky and our universe might even have a tangled web of countless wormholes already. Shortly after the Big Bang, quantum fluctuations in the universe at the smallest scales, far, far smaller than an atom, may have created many, many traversable wormholes. Threaded through them are strings, called cosmic strings. In the first billionth of a trillionth of a second after the Big Bang, the ends of these tiny, tiny wormholes were pulled light years apart, scattering them through the universe. If wormholes were made in the early universe, whether with cosmic strings or some other way, they could be all over, just waiting to be discovered. One might even be closer than we realize. From the outside, black holes and wormholes can look very similar, leading some physicists to suggest the supermassive black holes in the center of galaxies are actually wormholes. It will be very hard to go all the way to the center of the Milky Way to find out though, but that's okay. There might be an equally extremely hard way to get our hands on a wormhole. We could try to make one. To be traversable and useful, there are a few properties we want a wormhole to have. First, it must obviously connect two distant parts of space-time, like your bedroom and the bathroom, or Earth and Jupiter. Second, it should not contain any event horizons which would block two-way travel. Third, it should be sufficiently sized so that the gravitational forces don't kill human travelers. The biggest problem we have to solve is keeping our wormholes open. No matter how we make wormholes, gravity tries to close them. Gravity wants to pinch it closed and cut the bridge, leaving only black holes at the ends. Whether it's a traversable wormhole with both ends in ours, or a wormhole to another universe, it will try to close unless we have something propping it open. For very old string theory wormholes, that's the cosmic strings job. For man-made wormholes, we need a new ingredient: exotic matter. This isn't anything like we find on Earth or even antimatter. It's something totally new and different and exciting with crazy properties like nothing that's ever been seen before. Exotic matter is stuff that has negative mass. Positive mass, like people and planets and everything else in the universe, is attractive because of gravity. But negative mass would be repulsive. It would push you away. This makes a kind of anti-gravity that props open our wormholes. And exotic matter must exert enormous pressure to push space-time open, greater even than the pressure at the centers of neutron stars. With exotic matter, we could weave space-time however we see fit. We may even have a candidate for this exotic matter, the vacuum of space itself. Quantum fluctuations in empty space are constantly creating pairs of particles and antiparticles, only for them to be annihilated an instant later. The vacuum of space is boiling with them, and we can already manipulate them to produce an effect similar to the negative mass we're looking for. We could use this to stabilize our wormholes. Once we're keeping it open, the ends would start together, so we'd have to move them around to interesting places. We could start by wiring the solar system, leaving one end of each wormhole in orbit around the Earth. We could fling others into deep space. The Earth could be a wormhole hub for a vast interstellar human civilization spread over light years, but only a wormhole away. However, wormholes have a dark side. Even opening a single wormhole kind of breaks the universe in fundamental ways, potentially creating time travel paradoxes and violating the causal structure of the universe. Many scientists think that this not only means they should be impossible to make, but that it's impossible for them to exist at all. So for now, we only know that wormholes exist in our hearts and on paper in the form of equations.
Your time machine broke, and you're stuck in the worst time in history. It feels like you stepped into an oven. There are no plants or any vegetation, and almost no moisture in the air. The sunlight, smashing down from the cloudless and weirdly colored sky, is reflected by an endless sea of red and orange sand dunes stretching over the horizon for thousands of kilometers. Dust devils the size of buildings dance over the hellish landscape.
You're in the early Triassic, hothouse Earth 250 million years ago, a few million years after the worst mass extinction in history. The planet is still suffering from a permanent fever. Volcanism and the runaway greenhouse effect has transformed the planet into hell. There's 3 to 5 times more CO2 in the air than in the human era. The formation of the massive supercontinent Pangaea led to the largest desert in history that barely sees any rain. The gigantic ocean is warm, even deep below. 2 superheated currents circulate around the globe, pumping extreme amounts of heat and moisture into the atmosphere. There's no ice, even at the poles.
Seems like you're stuck in the center of the desert, isolated by endless ancient landmasses, one of the most hostile environments Earth has ever produced. The deserts we know are still full of life, but not this one. Its core is starved of moisture and the air is bone dry. Your skin dries out immediately and your lips begin to crack. The CO2-rich air is easily 50 degrees Celsius and sears your lungs with every labored breath. The rubber soles of your boots begin to melt. If you touch the ground, you'll get burns. Your sweat evaporates before it could cool you, and your exposed skin begins to crack within minutes. Suddenly, it becomes even hotter as a red sandstorm envelops the landscape. Like thousands of tiny sparks, burning hot sand hits your skin. You're pressing your machine's buttons at random. It can't do time travel, but it can still move. You shoot over some of the mightiest mountains Earth has ever seen. Eventually, you stop at the shores of the Tethys Sea. The vast shallow ocean looks more like a swamp among scattered groups of waist-high ferns and spindly stems with tufted foliage. A few Lystrosaurus feeding on them eye you curiously. The water is murky and looks sickly and milky. Colourful mats of bacteria float on the surface like oil slicks. The air is hot and humid like a steam room. It's hard to breathe and your sweat can't evaporate and cool you. Even the water can't give you any relief. It's as hot as a freshly run bathtub. This hot ocean can't hold much oxygen, especially in deeper layers. Bacteria and bivalves are the only species that thrive here. The waves move almost sluggishly through this thick bacterial soup. When they break, they leave behind a glistening iridescent film. Each wave that hits the shore releases a mist that makes your eyes and throat burn, carrying the rotten egg stench of hydrogen sulfide up from the oxygen-starved depths. Barely conscious from the heat and smell and CO2, you look at the horizon. A storm is building unlike any you've ever seen. The hot ocean feeds it endless energy, and with no continents to slow it down, it will dwarf the fiercest hurricanes of your time. You're doomed. Your broken time machine jolts and screeches. Something's happening.
You're near the equator, in the late Carboniferous, 320 million years ago. The atmosphere is thick with moisture. The climate is locked in a never-ending wet super summer without any other seasons. Colliding continents are covered by the largest swamps the planet will ever see. A paradise for plants, growing faster than their dead biomass can decompose. The ground beneath is a warm, soggy mass of decaying vegetation. What will be an endless desert in 70 million years is now an endless alien jungle. A huge variety of life is thriving in this period.
From your perspective, this is not that great. You're lost in a maze of giant tree-like plants towering over a twisted undergrowth of giant ferns and endless varieties of bizarre and unfamiliar vegetation. The thick, humid air smells of sweet decay, but breathing makes you dizzy. Your vision seems too sharp, your thoughts slightly frantic. The dense plant cover has supercharged the atmosphere with oxygen, 60% higher than in the human era, and your body is trying to cope. Which is great for the dominant land animals which have conquered every niche of this majestic garden. Bugs. You're stuck in the golden age of arthropods. In this oxygen-rich world, they have evolved to sizes that will never be possible again. They are innumerable and everywhere. Armored cat-sized megarachni crash through the undergrowth, hunting a swarm of panicked roachoids that scatter in all directions. Above you, a griffin fly with wings spanning nearly a meter and beating like helicopter blades catches a Paleodictyoptera mid-flight. You stumble through the bushes filled with countless crawling creatures as an arthropleura the length of a car picks its way through the ferns, moving countless legs in hypnotic waves. You reach a swampy clearing and stumble into the shallow water, dizzy and terrified as a Pulmonoscorpius rips apart its prey, eyeing you with some interest. Here in the clearing, you can see the sky above the canopy glow shrieking red, intensifying at an alarming pace. The extreme humidity here creates sudden, violent thunderstorms, and the oxygen-rich atmosphere makes everything dangerously flammable. Even the wet vegetation can burst into explosive flame with the slightest spark. Why do all of your trips end in a storm? Well, at least it will take all the creatures that want to eat you with it. Your broken time machine jolts back to life. The world is folding in on itself.
You've woken up in the early Devonian, 400 million years ago. Most of the planet is covered in shallow seas, while the land is mostly rocky plains and mountains broken by braided rivers and mudflats. Earth is in a state of transition. For about 100 million years, life has begun to break down rocks into soil, a soft layer that enables plants to grow and life thrive. The ozone layer is slowly building up, fed by organisms releasing gases. Recently, this process has been speeding up. The land is turning from toxic to semi-habitable.
The sky looks wrong somehow. The sun blazes harsh and white, barely filtered by the unfamiliar atmosphere. The air feels thin, with only 15% oxygen compared to today's 21%. Each breath feels shallow and unsatisfying. You're on the verge of passing out and can only move slowly. At least it's currently moderately warm and not stormy. But it's what dominates these lands that makes this world truly alien. Reaching up to 8 meters into the sky are massive obelisks of fungal prototaxites. As you walk closer, you notice spores catching the sunlight, drifting through the air like tiny stars. Your movement disturbs more of them, creating clouds suspended in the thin atmosphere. They coat your skin with a fine, powdery, itchy film. You try not to think about how many you're inhaling with every breath in this oxygen-poor air. The ground feels nothing like soil. It's mostly rock, partly covered by a thin, slightly springy layer of decomposing matter. Some shallow water pools reflect the pale alien sky above. Between the fungal towers, there's a carpet of smaller fungi and a few alien-like primitive plants. No flowers, no leaves, just strange green stalks and fern-like structures that reach your ankles. Around you, the fungal towers rise like pale pillars. Their surfaces neither smooth nor rough, but something in between. They're neither wet nor dry, slightly yielding under your touch. Small patches of what might be lichen create splashes of muted greens and yellows on their surfaces. The only animals you can spot are a few insects burrowing into the large mushrooms. Everything is eerily quiet. You sit down on a rock. Is this it? As the night approaches, the pale sky shifts into sickly purples and greys, bleeding into the darkness. No animal sounds announce the coming night, just the solemn whisper of the prototaxites creaking in the wind. Through the thin atmosphere, the stars and the Milky Way illuminate the scenery with unsettling clarity. The fungal towers loom as pale shapes against the starlit sky, their silhouettes seeming even more wrong in the darkness. You are utterly alone, a time traveler lost in an alien world. Your time machine sputters.
What now?
The world we live in feels normal, ordinary. It feels like this is just how humans exist and always existed. But it's not. Never before have we humans lived in a world as sophisticated and engineered to our needs as today, giving us the luxury to forget about ourselves and not worry about survival. Food, shelter, security, all of this is more or less taken for granted. But we're a special few. For more than 99.99% of human history, life was completely different. And there's no such thing as just one human history. Our story begins 6 million years ago, when the tribe of hominini split and our relationship with the apes ended. 2.8 million years ago, the genus of Homo, the first humans, emerged. We like to think of ourselves as the only humans, but this is far from the truth. When we, Homo sapiens sapiens, came into existence 200,000 years ago, there were at least 6 other human species around. Cousins of comparable intelligence and ability, which must have been incredibly scary, kind of like living with aliens. Some of them were very successful. Homo erectus, for example, survived for 2 million years, 10 times longer than modern humans have existed. The last of the other humans disappeared around 10,000 years ago. We don't know what caused them to die out. Modern humans have at least a few % of Neanderthal and other human DNA, so there was some mixing, but certainly not enough to be a merger between species. So we don't know if our cousins went away because they lost the battle over resources or because of a series of minor genocides. Either way, only we remain. Back to the beginnings of humanity. 2.8 million years ago, early humans used tools, but did not make a lot of progress for nearly 2 million years. Until they learned to control fire. Fire meant cooking, which made food more nutritious, which contributed to the development of our brain. It also produced light and warmth, which made days longer and winters less gruesome. On top of that, it not only scared predators away, it could also be used for hunting. A torched wood or grassland provided small animals, nuts and tubers that were pre-roasted. From 300,000 years ago, most of the different human species lived in small hunter-gatherer societies. They had fire, wood and stone tools, planned for the future, buried their dead, and had cultures of their own. But most importantly, they spoke to each other, probably in a kind of proto-language less complex than ours. If we had a time machine, how far would we be able to go back, steal a few babies, and raise them today without anyone noticing that they're a bit different? There is much debate. Anatomically modern humans emerged 200,000 years ago, but probably 70,000 years is as far as we could travel back and still snatch a behaviorally modern human. Before that, the babies would probably lack a few crucial gene mutations necessary to build a brain with modern language and abstract thinking abilities. At some point around 50,000 years ago, there was an explosion in innovation. Tools and weapons became more sophisticated, and culture became more complex, because at this point, humans had a multi-purpose brain and a more advanced language to communicate information with each other effectively and down to the last detail. This allowed much closer cooperation and is what really makes us different from any other creature on Earth. Not our comparatively weak bodies and inferior senses, but the ability to cooperate flexibly in large groups, unlike, for example, rigid beehives or intimate but tiny wolf packs. As our brain evolved, we became able to do something life had been unable to do up to this point. 1. Expand knowledge quickly. 2. Preserve the knowledge gained over generations. 3. Build on past knowledge to gain even deeper insights. This seems daft, but until then, information had to be passed on from generation to generation, mostly through genetics, which is not efficient. Still, for the next 40,000 years, human life remained more or less the same. There was little to build upon. Our ancestors were only one animal among many. Building a skyscraper without knowing what a house is hard. But while it's easy to be arrogant in our attitude to our ancestors, this would be ignorant. Humans 50,000 years ago were survival specialists. They had a detailed mental map of their territory, their senses were fine-tuned to the environment, they knew and memorized a great amount of information about plants and animals. They could make complicated tools that required years of careful training and very fine motor skills. Their bodies compared to our athletes today just because of their daily routines, and they lived a rich social life within their tribe. Survival required so many skills that the average brain volume of early modern humans might even have been bigger than it is today. As a group, we know more today, but as individuals, our ancestors were superior to us. But then, around 12,000 years ago in multiple locations, humans developed agriculture. Everything changed very quickly. Before, survival as a hunter and forager required superb physical and mental abilities in all fields from everybody. With the rise of the agricultural age, individuals could increasingly rely on the skills of others for survival. This meant that some of them could specialize. Maybe they worked on better tools. Maybe they took time to breed more resistant crops or better livestock. Maybe they started inventing things. As farming got more and more efficient, what we call civilization began. Agriculture gave us a reliable and predictable food source, which allowed humans to hoard food on a large scale for the first time, which is much easier to do with grains than meat. A food stock required protection, which led to communities living together in tighter spaces. First, early defense structures were built. The need for organization grew. The more organized we got, the faster things became efficient. Villages became cities, cities became kingdoms, kingdoms became empires. Connections between humans exploded, which led to opportunities to exchange knowledge. Progress became exponential. About 500 years ago, the scientific revolution began. Mathematics, physics, astronomy, biology and chemistry transformed everything we thought we knew. The Industrial Revolution followed soon after, laying the foundation for the modern world. As our overall efficiency grew exponentially, more people could spend their lifetime contributing to the progress of humanity. Revolutions kept happening. The invention of the computer, its evolution into a medium we all use on a daily basis, and the rise of the internet shaped our world. It's hard to grasp how fast all of that happened. It's been about 125,000 generations since the emergence of the first human species. About 7,500 generations since the physiologically modern human saw the light of day. 500 generations ago, what we call civilization began. 20 generations ago, we learned how to do science. And the internet became available to most people only 1 generation ago. Today, we live in the most prosperous age humanity has ever experienced. We have transformed this planet, from the composition of its atmosphere to large-scale changes in its landscape, and also in terms of the other animals in existence. We light up the night with artificial stars and put people in a metal box in the sky. Some have even walked on our moon. We put robots on other planets. We've looked deep into the past of the universe with mechanical eyes. Our knowledge and our way of acquiring and storing more of it has exploded. The average high school student today knows more about the universe than a scholar a few centuries ago. Humans dominate this planet, even if our rule is very fragile. We are still not that different from our ancestors 70,000 years ago, but your lifestyle has existed for less than 0.001% of human history. From here on, there's no saying what the future holds for us. We're building a skyscraper, but we're not sure if it's standing on a solid foundation or if we're building it on quicksand. Let's leave it with that for now. The next time you miss your train, your burger is not hot enough, or someone cuts in line, remember how special this made-up human world is. Maybe it's not worth being upset about all those little things. Look around you. Where are you? Where is this place you're occupying? Somewhere in a room, maybe in a city, on a continent, on a planet orbiting a star in a galaxy among billions. But where is all of that? While this may feel like a daft question, it turns out that the concept of an absolute position is something humans made up. In a nutshell, the universe is a big bag of space that has things in it. If someone removed all these things, the stars and planets and black holes and dust, there would just be empty space left. In empty space, the concept of having a position loses all meaning. Empty space is uniform, the same everywhere. The space we occupy is not like a stage under our feet. We can't mark specific points or staple something to space-time as an anchor. Without things, there is no position. We are really ever only at a position in relation to something else. Which also means that things we take for granted, like up and down, are actually relative too. Okay, let's fill the universe up with things again and try to find out where you are right now, relative to everything else. Let's start this video at a familiar place and then get increasingly weird. From your perspective, the world is seemingly flat and you can move in 3 dimensions. It's what physicists call a frame of reference.
the perspective you have of the universe and how you see things moving around you, where your up and down is. Your frame of reference is correct for you, but not for the rest of the universe. Around 5 kilometers from you, where the horizon begins, the ground noticeably curves away from you. If you could see through the ground, you'd see people from below or sideways. But they don't fall down off the planet because gravity doesn't actually pull them down. Down is an illusion of your reference frame. To Earth's reference frame, gravity just pulls in. But for humans there is an up and down because within our frame of reference that just makes sense. Which is also why we think that the planet itself has an up and down, north and south, and we made our maps accordingly. But an observer looking at the solar system might disagree. Our maps make sense to us because we're used to them, not because they are correct. Okay, so this is step 1. Your position on what feels like a flat surface but is actually a sphere. But this sphere is always moving, never staying in one position. Earth is orbiting a star, the Sun, at the center of the solar system. While we usually imagine this as pretty orderly, someone looking at us from the outside would see something pretty messy. To see this more clearly, we'll exaggerate all these movements. This is not to scale. First of all, our orbit really is an ellipse, so we spend half the year sinking a little bit closer to the Sun, speeding up, and half the year rising up a bit and slowing down. And the ellipse itself changes its shape every 100,000 years too. And in another cycle of 112,000 years, the ellipse itself is drifting, which at least creates a beautiful shape. In the end, we get an orbital path that looks like a wobbly circle with wavy edges. And it gets worse as the Moon now starts to mess things up too. As the Moon is a pretty massive thing, it pulls on Earth. Both objects orbit their common center of gravity that lies around 4,700 kilometers off to the side of Earth's core. In practice, this means that as the Moon orbits Earth, it's jerking Earth around a bit, enough to make it jiggle. Okay, so you're standing on the surface of a rotating planet that is jiggling around the Sun in an elliptical orbit that changes a bit every year. But who's to say the Earth is right? From the perspective of the Sun, the plane of the solar system is arbitrary. It's defined as the plane the Earth orbits in because that is convenient for us. In reality, the other planets are just a little bit inclined with respect to our plane. From their point of view, we're the ones with a slightly bent orbit. But this isn't it, far from it. The solar system as a whole is orbiting the center of the Milky Way galaxy. If we look at the Milky Way, we can clearly make out a galactic plane in which the solar system orbits the center every 230 million years. But of course, it's not that simple. First of all, the plane of the solar system is not aligned with the plane of the galaxy. Nothing really is. Just like the planets in the solar system orbit the Sun on their own planes, so do all the stars orbiting the galactic center. The solar system as a whole is tilted about 60 degrees towards the galactic plane, speeding through space at almost 1,000,000 kilometers per hour. Someone in the center of the galaxy would see the orbits of the planets moving through space in a helix shape, which you can imagine as a corkscrew motion on the tilted plane of the solar system relative to the plane of the galaxy. This orientation in space means that sometimes the planets are sort of in front of the Sun as it orbits around the galactic core. Let's just look at this for a moment. There is a strange and eerie beauty about how our planets and the Sun move through space. Do you feel a bit dizzy? It gets worse. This is still not the whole story because the mass of the galactic disk is constantly pulling on the solar system too. Like a drunk dolphin, we're diving down and shooting up hundreds of light years through the galactic plane 10 times every orbit along arcs thousands of light years long. We haven't mapped this motion out completely as it takes the solar system tens of millions of years to go up and back once, and well, humanity is not that old. Let's look at your relative position again. On a planet tilted towards the Sun, jiggled around by the Moon, in a solar system tilted towards the galactic plane, moving forward in a helical shape, diving up and down through the plane. But where is up in a galaxy? At this point, the frame of reference becomes a bit arbitrary and pointless because of the nature of the universe at this scale. The Milky Way is part of a galaxy group that appears to be part of greater structures like the Laniakea supercluster, which itself is part of the gigantic Pisces-Cetus supercluster complex, and finally a galactic filament that spans hundreds of millions of light years in all directions and orientations. Someone looking right at us from that far away will only see the end of greatness. All stuff appears homogeneous, the same everywhere. Just like with empty space, when everything looks the same, who's to say anyone's view is better than anyone else's? We've reached the end of our little exercise in cosmic humility. Let's make the journey backwards again, from the indescribably large to the really large to our galactic home, to our galaxy, to the solar system diving up and down through the Milky Way, to the jiggle of existence, and finally, back to you right now, watching this video. If this is all a bit much, don't feel bad. The scale of the universe is brain-crushing, and trying to keep track of how everything is oriented or decide where the best up and down is hard. But it doesn't really matter, because it doesn't change where you are. You're already in the best spot you possibly could be, right here, right now. For all you care, nothing can stop you from being right at the center of your own little universe. You're going forward through time 1 second every second. Congratulations, you're a time traveler. A bit lame, but let's start here to get to the fun, real time travel to ride on dinosaurs and high-five Einstein. Time isn't really a thing that passes, but a dimension, a direction you can move in. We think our universe is four-dimensional, with 3 spatial and 1 time dimensions smooshed together into a fancy thing we call space-time. What you experience as time passing and your life happening is actually you moving through the time dimension. And this dimension is a bummer. While you can go forward, backward, left and right, up and down in the space dimensions, in time you can only go forward. You only get older, never younger. You can't make detours. But this is an illusion. You have far more control over how you move through time. To explain how this actually works, without making a maths video, we have to make a lot of physicists grumpy, so please keep in mind that we're simplifying and lying a bit. Okay, so there's a very strange rule. Everything in our universe moves at the speed of light through 4-dimensional space-time. Your speed through space-time is the sum of your separate speeds through time and space. It's impossible for you to stay still. Even if you're not moving through space dimensions, you're moving through the time dimension, blasting face first into the future. You can slow down in the time dimension by moving faster through the space dimensions, but in total, you will always move at the speed of light through space-time. If you could somehow truly stand still in space, you'd still move through time at the speed of light, and the other way round. Photons, light particles, move at the speed of light through space. They don't experience any time passing because their speed in that time dimension is 0. In the time dimension, they're frozen in place. If you see light on Earth, from the photon's perspective, it was just on the surface of the sun and then suddenly crashed into your eye with nothing happening in between. Remember, we're telling a science story here. In real life, things are more complicated. For one, it's impossible to truly stand still relative to space itself. You can only be standing still relative to other things in space. And you can't really define a reference frame for photons as we just did. For details, check out our sources. But now, back to our story. Okay, so everything in the universe moves at the same breathtaking speed, but this speed is split between space and time, which leads to all sorts of wacky things, and where we can see time travel happen. Real and easy time travel. When a bus drives past you, it's moving a little bit faster through space than you are. So, it moves slower through time than you. Or, how it's usually worded, the bus is moving slower through time relative to you. While this makes things feel like weird physics magic, it's very simple. Move faster through space, go slower in time. Move slower through space, go faster in time. And if you had another person moving way faster or slower than you, both end up traveling different distances in the time dimension. The story that's usually told to demonstrate this is to get twins, force one of them into a rocket against their will, shoot them through space super fast while the other twin chills on Earth. And because one twin moves very fast through space while the other moves slowly on Earth, they move at different speeds through time. When the rocket finally gets home, they're no longer the same age, and the younger space twin is ready to start years of therapy for being abducted by theoretical physicists. This is the twin paradox, and it makes perfect sense within the rules of the universe. If you want to learn more about the paradoxes of time, we made a video about it. But in a nutshell, you're using time dilation, the fact that your position in time is subjective and only true for yourself. With sufficiently fast rockets, you could get as far as you want into the future. Technically, this way you could witness the end of the universe or look at the final thing that will ever happen. We also made videos about that. We should mention that there's another way to jump forward in time. Massive objects bend space-time, causing time to go slower near them. On Earth, the effect is tiny. The gravity of our planet makes time pass 0.00000007% slower than in deep space, far from any gravitational fields. Hardly useful for time travel, but it's a start. If you move into a really strong gravitational field, like around a black hole, the closer you get to the event horizon, the slower time passes for you. If we kidnap our twin again, they won't notice it at all. Their watch ticks as fast as it always does. But from the outside, they seem to almost stand still. Only when the twin leaves the gravitational field and comes back to Earth do they realize they time traveled. Okay, so you can time travel to the future by going fast or near a black hole. But this is pretty lame and has literally only downsides, except for people who want to sort of teleport into the future. And it makes building a gigantic human space empire super hard, because even if we develop the technology to go really super fast between stars, going on a faraway journey will always mean leaving your home as you knew it forever. But now that we know all of this, there's actually a way we could use the rules of our universe to travel backwards through time. The past is a faraway land. Let's go there. So you always move through space-time at the speed of light. If you go fast through the space dimension, you slow down in the time dimension. And here we find an actual opening for backwards time travel. The theory of relativity, which may be the most solid scientific theory we know, does not forbid faster than light motion through space. If you move through the space dimension faster than the speed of light, superluminal, you need to move through the time dimension with negative speed. That means you go backwards through time relative to the rest of the universe into the past. Actually, scientists have been looking for superluminal particles and given them a name: tachyons. They could exist and would have wild properties like getting faster when they lose energy and, of course, traveling backwards in time. Finally, real time travel. Just like with photons, it isn't really possible to clearly define how time passes for tachyons themselves. It depends on how you move through space-time relative to them. But now, for the first time, some observers could actually see tachyons literally traveling backwards in time, which means they could be used to directly interact with the past. In theory, you could use them to send messages to your past self and change all sorts of things that have already happened. Maybe with some tachyon-powered sci-fi future tech, you could see a star die before it was born, meet your great-grandparents, prevent your past self from making that one dumb mistake, win the lottery, or get eaten by dinosaurs, and create juicy time paradoxes that also kind of break the universe. Oh, what's that? Right. It seems there are things in our universe that are impossible to mix. Unfortunately, the theory of relativity specifically forbids anything that starts out traveling slower than the speed of light to reach the speed of light, because moving faster through space requires energy, and the energy required to reach the speed of light is literally infinite. Even if you could gather all the energy of the universe, you couldn't accelerate a grain of sand to the speed of light. You can get as close as you like, but you can never reach it. It is possible to move at the speed of light as photons do, but they always move at the speed of light. If you move superluminally, you will always move superluminally. And sadly, so far, we don't have the tiniest bit of evidence that tachyons exist. While they work on paper, most scientists think they're not real. So for now, it seems that time travel into the past is strictly impossible, no matter how hard we try. The past is a faraway land, and while we can look at it in pictures and movies and our memories, it's locked away, forever outside of our reach. While this is sad, it leaves you with the most important time there is, right now, the moment where you actually exist, and a future that's yours to forge. If you want, you could even time travel to it.
An ant is pretty stupid. It doesn't have much of a brain, no will, no plan. And yet, many ants together are smart. An ant colony can construct complex structures. Some colonies keep farms of fungi, others take care of cattle. They can wage war or defend themselves. How is this possible? How can a bunch of stupid things do smart things together? This phenomenon is called emergence, and it's one of the most fascinating and mysterious features of our universe. In a nutshell, it describes small things forming bigger things that have different properties than the sum of their parts. Emergence is complexity arising from simplicity, and emergence is everywhere. Water has vastly different properties to the molecules that make it up, like the concept of wetness. Take wet fabric. If you zoom in far enough, there is no wetness, there are just molecules sitting in the spaces between the atoms of the cloth. Wetness is an emerging property of water, something new only created by a lot of individual interactions between water molecules. And this is sort of it. Many things interact under a certain set of rules, creating something above and beyond themselves. It turns out that more is different. This different property is itself a new thing, and that new thing can couple with other new things to repeat the process. You can imagine this as layers stacked upon each other, every layer made from more complex parts. Atoms form molecules, molecules form proteins, proteins make up cells, cells make up organs, organs form individuals, individuals form societies. But how can something be more than the sum of its parts? How do ants form the sort of cloudy entity that is a colony? By following a rule set that produces order through chaos. For example, let's look at how an ant colony distributes jobs. Let's assume that a colony should have 25% workers, 25% caretakers, 25% soldiers, and 25% gatherers. Ants communicate their current job via chemicals. For example, a worker ant constantly secretes chemicals that say, "I'm a worker." When ants meet other ants, they smell each other to gather information, telling each other their job and what they're doing. Both keep track of who they met in the past. Now, imagine an anteater kills most of the gatherers. If this isn't fixed quickly, the colony will starve. Many worker ants need to switch jobs, but how do you tell this to thousands of them? Simple, you don't. Our worker ant will still meet and smell other ants, but it will encounter almost no gatherers at all. It counts too few gatherers until it reaches a critical point, and then it changes its job. The worker becomes a gatherer. Other ants will do the same until after a while there are enough gatherers again. The balance is restored all by itself. The actions and interactions of an individual are random. You can't plan which ant will encounter which other ant, but the simple set of rules is so elegant that a colony's many operations emerge as a consequence. On an even more fundamental level, hundreds of millions of complicated molecules interact to maintain a robust and amazing structure. A being with vastly different properties than the sum of its dead parts emerges. The smallest unit of life, a cell. We still don't have a clear definition of what living things are, we just know they emerge from things that are not alive. Cells combine and cooperate, they specialize and respond to one another, and over time, we develop into complex organisms with remarkable capacities. Your arms and legs and heart are an incredibly complex and complicated system made of trillions of individual stupid things, and yet we breathe, digest, and watch YouTube videos. How do your cells know what to do? Think of the pacemaker cells in your heart. Billions of them need to send out an impulse just at the right moment to collectively create a heartbeat. Our cells exchange chemical information with their neighbor cells to see what they're up to and then decide what to do. If it's among a lot of cells that are working on the same task, it will start working on that task as well and sync up with them. There is no mastermind giving commands, just single units communicating with their neighbors and acting according to the feedback they get. What about our most important part? What is the thing that asks these kinds of questions?
Is our consciousness then an emergent property of the cells in our brain? This question is too big and important. It deserves a video of its own. Some things that emerge are hard to define. You can't touch an ant colony, only its parts. It has neither brain, nor face, nor body. And yet the colony interacts with the world. Just like colonies emerge from ants, things emerge from humans, like nations. What actually is a nation? Is it its population? Is it its institutions? Its symbols like its flag, colors, or anthems? The physical things it makes like cities? The territory it occupies? All of these things are fluid. Populations change and are replaced. Institutions come and go. Cities can be constructed and abandoned. Borders have changed all the time for most of history. And symbols get replaced by new symbols. A nation has no face, no brain, no body. Are nations not real then? Of course they are. Just like ant colonies, nations interact with the world. They can change landscapes, wage wars, grow or decline, and they can stop existing. But they only exist because of a lot of humans interacting with each other. But not just nations. All the complex structures that surround us emerge from us. Even if we don't intend to, we are constantly creating communities, companies, cities, societies. All of these things are entities that have fundamentally different properties and abilities than the pretty stupid apes they emerged from. We don't know why any of this happens, we just observe it, and it seems to be a fundamental property of our universe. It may be the most beautiful and wondrous property of our universe. Are you your body? Well, kind of, right? But is there a line where this stops being true? How much of yourself can you remove before you stop being you? And does the question even make sense? Your physical existence is cells. Trillions of them, at least 10 times more than there are stars in the Milky Way. A cell is a living being, a machine made of up to 50,000 different proteins. It has no consciousness, no will, no purpose, it just is. But it is still an individual. Together, your cells form huge structures for jobs like preparing food, gathering resources, transporting stuff around, scanning the environment, and so on. If you extract cells from your body and put them in the right environment, they will continue to stay alive for a while. So, your cells can exist without you. But you can't exist without them. If we take all the cells away, there is no you anymore. Is there a line where a pile of your cells stops being you? For example, if you donate an organ, billions of your cells will continue to live on inside someone else. Does this mean that a part of you became a part of another person? Or is this other body keeping a part of you alive? Or let us imagine an experiment. You and a random person from the street exchange cells. One at a time, your body gets one of their cells, their body gets one of your cells, at which point would they become you? Would they ever, or is this just a very slow and gross way to teleport you? Let's make this more complicated. The image of ourselves as a static thing is untenable. Almost all of your cells have to die during your lifetime. 250 million have died since the beginning of this video alone. Between 1 and 3 million per second. In a 7-year period, most of your cells are replaced at least once. Every time your cell setup changes, you are slightly different than before, so a part of you is dying constantly. If you are lucky enough to become old, you will have cycled through roughly 1 billion cells. So what you consider yourself is really just a snapshot. But sometimes cells are broken and don't want to die, questioning the very nature of the unity of our bodies. We call them cancer. They cancel the biological social contract and become basically immortal. Cancer is not an outside invader, it's a part of you that puts its own survival over yours. But you could also argue that a cancer cell becomes another entity inside us, another being that just wants to thrive and survive. Can we blame it for that? A chilling cell story is that of Henrietta Lacks,
a young cancer patient who died in 1951. Usually, cells only survived for a few days in the lab, making research very hard. Henrietta's cancer cells were immortal. Over the decades, they were multiplied over and over again and used for countless research projects, saving countless lives. Henrietta's cells are still alive and overall have been grown to at least 20 tons of biomass. So there are living parts around the world from someone who has been considered dead for decades. How much of Henrietta is in these cells? What makes one of your cells you anyway? Maybe the information contained in it, your DNA. Until recently, it was believed that all the cells in your body had basically the same genetic code. But it turns out this is wrong. Your genome is mobile, changing over time through mutations and environmental influences. This is especially the case in your brain. According to recent discoveries, a single neuron in an adult brain has more than 1,000 mutations in its genetic code that are not present in the cells surrounding it. But how much you is your DNA really? About 8% of the human genome is made up of viruses that once infected our ancestors and merged with us. Mitochondria, power plants of the cell, once were bacteria that merged with the ancestors of your cells. They still have their own DNA. An average cell has hundreds of them, hundreds of little things that are not really human, but they still kind of are. It is confusing. Let's backtrack a bit. We know that you're made up of trillions of little things, made from more little things that are constantly changing. Together, all those little things are not static, but dynamic. Their composition and condition is changing constantly. So we might just be a self-sustaining pattern without clear borders that gained self-awareness at some point and now has the ability to think about itself through time and space, but really only exists in this exact very moment. Where did this pattern start? With your conception? When the first human arose? When life first began conquering our small planet? Or when the elements that make up your body were forged in a star? Our human brains evolved to deal with absolutes. The fuzzy borders that make up reality are hard to grasp. Maybe ideas like beginning and end, life and death, you and me, are really not absolutes, but ideas belonging to a fluent pattern, a pattern that is lost in this strange and beautiful universe. The problem of who we are
isn't just a question of our cells, but it's also a question of our minds. Just as our cells can be divided and separated from us, so can our very brains be divided and separated from us, while still in the skull. Click here to go to my channel and watch the next part.
Okay, so now go watch CGP Gray's video. If you're not yet subscribed to his channel, you should really change that now. A lot of things can be beautiful. Landscapes, faces, fine art, or epic architecture, stars in the sky, or simply the reflection of the sun on an empty bottle. Beauty is nothing tangible, it only exists in our heads as a pleasant feeling. If we have to define it, we perceive something as beautiful if its color, shape, form, or proportion somehow are appealing or delightful to us. Beauty is a very human experience that's been with us for millions of years. Even our first tools were trimmed to a symmetrical shape. Researchers have tried to find practical reasons why our ancestors invested the time to make their tools look nice, but couldn't really identify any. It seems that early humans shaped their tools into teardrops simply because they liked them better that way. Throughout our history, the definition of beauty has changed a lot. Ideals have shifted or turned into their opposites. But beyond individual and contemporary taste, some things have never really gone out of fashion. The golden ratio, symmetry, or fractal patterns can be found in the art and architecture of cultures from our beginnings to today. Humans seem to be in mysterious inherent agreement about the beauty of certain things. The patterns that keep coming up are all rooted in nature. They became part of our biology because they helped our ancestors survive. Fractal patterns, for example, occur all over nature, in snail shells, flower heads, waves, or clouds. Identifying and assessing these things and phenomena correctly used to be vital. Do those clouds mean rain will come soon? Are these waters safe to swim through? Can I eat this? Another pervasive thing is symmetry. In nature, it means everything is as it should be. Stems and trees and leaves and blossoms all grow symmetrically. A deer with impressive antlers is probably a source of nutritious meat. A deformed wheat ear may not be safe to eat. A symmetrical face is more likely to belong to a healthy and fertile mating partner. Because symmetry is so common in fauna and flora, it's extremely familiar to our brain. It helped our ancestors evaluate their environment more easily and react quickly to danger. Things that help us survive activate the reward center in our brain. Recognizing signals of safety and nutrition trigger nice feelings in us. So our sense of beauty probably evolved from pattern recognition. But it goes way beyond that now. Humans seem to have evolved an instinct for beauty that is deeply hardwired into us. It remains even after other processes in our brain stop working. Alzheimer's patients were asked to rank the beauty of several paintings. Then the experiment was repeated 2 weeks later. The patients had long since forgotten the paintings, but still ranked the beauty of the paintings in the same order. One could argue that this doesn't say much, so what if people stick to their personal preferences? But other research has shown that we have a sort of lowest common denominator when it comes to beauty. In different experiments, people were asked to distinguish real from fake abstract paintings. Some were originals by Mondrian and Pollock that were painted based on strict rules like fractal patterns, while the imitations were not. The majority picked out the original artworks. This worked with paintings from both artists, even though their styles are very different. Another experiment also used abstract artworks, but asked people to pick them out among similar paintings made either by children or animals. Again, the test subjects pointed out the legit paintings whose patterns were carefully planned and not random. So while we have a hard time pinning down what beauty is or what it's based on, we somehow recognize it when we see it. Humans don't navigate nature trying to survive day by day anymore. We left the natural world behind and created our own. We made the objects that surround us, the things we wear and use and look at. As we spread over the planet and our numbers grew, we shaped a completely man-made environment. In the process of doing so, we often neglected beauty in favor of functionality, cost, or efficiency. We built rows and rows of concrete housing blocks that nobody wants to live in. We have ugly underground subway stations, shabby public service buildings, and sprawling malls. One bland, standardized box beside the next. Humans don't like monotony. Eye-tracking software has shown that people keep focusing on details and ornaments of architecture while brushing quickly over blank walls. And not only are they no fun to look at, they actually make us miserable. Experiments with skin sensors showed that looking at vast, dull facades makes us feel bored and uncomfortable. This kind of boredom has been linked to raised heart rates and stress levels. And the opposite seems to be true too. Over the last decades, more and more studies have found that surroundings that are actually aesthetically pleasing to us can improve our well-being, our behavior, cognitive function, and mood. Our bodies and brains react measurably and visibly to everything that surrounds us. Beauty, in particular, has such a strong impact on our well-being that making useful things beautiful can actually make them better. In 2017, a hospital examined recovery factors through observation and interviews with patients and found that visual art in their lounge areas made them more comfortable and happier about their stay in general. Another study looked at how well patients recovered in a hospital that had 2 wards. A very old and rather ugly one and a newly renovated ward. To the researchers' surprise, the patients that stayed in the new renovated environment needed less pain medication and were released on average 2 days earlier than patients recovering in the old ward. More beautiful surroundings made them feel better physically. Beauty also has an effect on us on a daily basis. It can improve our general happiness. A study that looked at the main factors influencing the happiness of adults revealed an unexpected result. Besides things like good health and a harmonious family life, individual happiness is affected by how beautiful you find the city you live in. Beauty scored even higher than cleanliness or safety. So, what can we learn from all of this? We know that we humans have been fine-tuned for millions of years to process visual input and assess our surroundings.
It's just what we're programmed to do, and we're starting to learn more about how much beauty as a property is really influencing us. Beauty meets an inherent need for meaningful information. Maybe it would be worth giving it more space in this man-made world we have created. If you are like most people, there is a gap between the person you are and the person you wish to be. There are little things you think you should do and big things you ought to achieve. From working out regularly, eating healthily, learning a language, working on your novel, reading more, or simply actually doing your hobby instead of browsing Reddit. But it sometimes feels that to achieve your goals, you have to become a different person. Someone who is consistent, puts in more effort, has discipline and willpower. Maybe you've tried your hardest to be like that, and it worked for a while, until you find yourself slipping back into your old ways. In the end, you always seem to fail, and with every failed attempt, you become more and more frustrated and annoyed with yourself. If you believe success and hustle internet, it's all your own fault. If you don't succeed, you just didn't want it enough and the failure is all you. But change is actually hard, and as with most things in life, understanding why makes things easier. Imagine your brain as a lush and dense jungle. Moving through it, say to make a decision to do something, is like moving through an actual jungle. It's hard and it costs energy. Your brain hates expending energy, so it came up with a trick. All your actions and behaviors leave paths in the jungle of your brain. As you start doing something, you trample down some plants and make rough, improvised trails through the undergrowth. The more often you do the thing, the more pronounced the trail becomes. Over time, it turns into a path that is easier to tread, so you take it more often, and it turns into a street. As you repeat doing the thing over and over for years, the street turns into a highway. Traversing it becomes effortless, familiar, and comfortable. The more pronounced your brain highways, the more you get used to their comfort. So we continue to use them, which means we tend to do what we've always done. This is why change is hard, especially as an adult when your jungle is crisscrossed by lots of established streets and highways. To understand how those highways are built, we need to distinguish between two things: routines and habits. The things you do, routines and habits. A routine is a sequence of actions that you carry out the same way every time because they've worked out well for you. For example, you get the same ingredients for your favorite dish and cook them in a certain order because you like the taste of the result. Or before going to bed, you set an alarm at 6:30 because this is when you want to get up. Imagine routines as being executed by a wise planner. It's slow and analytical, responsible for strategizing and mental calculations. The planner is aware of the future and carefully considers what kind of result you want. Based on that, it chooses actions to achieve specific outcomes, even if they are uncomfortable, like taking a shower after getting up. Routines can eventually turn into habits, which feel much easier because they're basically a sequence of actions carried out without thinking about them. You've done them so often before that your brain considers them rewarding and a great response to a situation. So a habit can feel like you're on autopilot. You don't have to convince yourself to do something that's a habit, you just do it. The important thing about habits is that they are set in motion by triggers, context cues that can be single things or entire situations that give your brain the signal to start the behavior or action. You already have a lot of triggers in your life, like when you see your phone. You almost always unlock the screen. Or you reach for the seatbelt when you sit in a car. Or when you buy your coffee before work, you also get a cookie even though you aren't actually hungry. Habits are executed by an impulsive toddler. It responds to your immediate desires based on what's around you, without considering any longer-term goals. For the toddler, the future doesn't exist and it hates hard work. So when it notices a trigger, it steers you to take this easy road inside your brain that leads to a familiar, rewarding result. If you get coffee, the toddler also wants the cookie just because that's what you do every morning. This rewarding feeling is also how most of your bad habits started. Chocolate is tasty, browsing Reddit is occasionally mildly entertaining. This is why you repeat these actions, even if they're bad for you. Rewarding feelings associated with an action demand to be repeated, and so a bad habit is born. While the toddler sounds like a built-in sabotage mechanism, it is as important as the wise planner, and actually they work together most of the time. You need your wise planner for thinking big thoughts and parallel parking and doing your taxes. But letting your wise planner do everything would cost too much energy. Outsourcing mundane and repetitive tasks to habits managed by the toddler allows your brain to easily manage your daily life while dealing with more complex mental challenges at the same time. So if we want to change and introduce a new behavior into our lives, we can actually use these energy-saving mechanisms to make it easier. We'll focus on small things, not big ones. Improving your life a little is so much better than aiming high and changing nothing. Especially because small changes can do a lot over months and years. How to build a habit. If you want to make change easier, the best way may not be to force it with willpower, but to convince your brain that it's not that big of a deal. By creating new routines and then turning them into habits. You want your wise planner to construct that first trail and then use your toddler to help initiate the action effortlessly. Let's say you want to work out to be fitter, a very common goal. The first thing to do is to break down this pretty vague goal into clear, separate actions, because the idea is to make the action itself as easy a threshold as possible. So small it's manageable, and so specific that you don't have to think about it a lot. For example, a tangible, controllable action might be doing 10 squats every morning. So you can start by trying to create a routine, but already include clear triggers that the toddler can pick up later on. Remember, a trigger is nothing more than a signal that you always associate with the action. They can be visual pointers like seeing a particular object, like your training outfit, or a certain time of day, or a designated place like a nearby park, or even better, all of these things combined. The important thing is that you always start doing your action in a specific context. This trigger is the start button that will eventually set off the action automatically. So, to establish a home workout habit with 10 squats to begin with, you could make sure to always do them with your exercise gear on at the same place and time, like in your living room at 8 AM. Once you have your trigger and action, all you need to do is repeat them regularly, ideally every day. If you keep going, they will change from a routine to a habit, from a trail to a highway. Don't get this wrong, the squats will still take you energy to do. But the decision to do them will feel much less like a chore and more like a regular part of your day. While this is simple, it's not easy. Many things you want to turn into habits don't offer as much instant gratification as wasting time on Reddit. To make your new action easier to repeat and more likely to be picked up by the toddler, try to make it pleasurable. Not necessarily by rewarding yourself after you've done it, but by making the action or behavior itself more enjoyable. Like only listening to your favorite podcast while working out, or chipping away at your taxes while you wait for civilization to load the next round. You need to figure out what works for you. In principle, that's it. Frustratingly simple, like most things you can do to make your life better. How long it takes for your toddler to take over and establish a habit varies widely. It depends on the behavior you're trying to get used to, what kind of person you are, your stress levels, and many more things. It takes anything between 15 and 250 days until a new habit is kicked off automatically by its trigger. You won't know how long it will take for you. Starting is the easy part, especially in the first week or two. Continuing to do it every day is the hard part, but it does get easier as you keep going. There are no silver bullets for change. But the science of habits is a reminder that it is possible no matter how old or young you are. Even if you only end up doing a little more good stuff or a few new things, that's still a success. Being a little bit more healthy or knowledgeable is 1,000,000 times better than being unhappy about a thing and changing nothing. In the end, change is a direction, not a destination. Consciousness is perhaps the biggest riddle in nature. Stripped to its core meaning, consciousness is what allows us to be aware both of our surroundings and of our own inner state. But thinking about consciousness has this habit of taking us round in circles. We all intuitively know what consciousness is. It's this. It's what you're experiencing here, right now. But once we try to pinpoint just what exactly it is, it leaves us grasping at thin air. And not just us. Philosophers and scientists struggle to define consciousness. Different schools and ideas compete with one another, but no one has come close to figuring it out. It's unsettling to realize that we don't understand what makes us aware of ourselves and the world. In this fuzzy area, consciousness and intelligence are also related, although they are not the same. We'll talk in greater depth about theories of consciousness and intelligence in other videos. Like much of what makes us human, our consciousness is likely to have evolved from less complex forms as a product of evolution by natural selection. It has probably emerged from an immense several 100-million-year sequence of countless microsteps that together make up a sort of gradient of consciousness. What was the first step on this path from the non-conscious to the basic consciousness that ultimately led to the convoluted consciousness we humans enjoy today? Take a stone. The consensus is that a stone is not conscious, though not everyone agrees even on this. Some panpsychists claim that a lump of rock may have an inner life. However, there are no real grounds for any such assumption, since stones never show behavior. Their inner life can neither be proven nor disproven. A more common starting point is with living things. A living thing, or a self, is a part of the universe that sustains itself and makes more of its kind. To do so, it needs energy. And this is where an awareness of the world comes in handy. The original function of consciousness was probably to direct a mobile self that was short of energy to a fresh supply of food. On the smaller scales of life, you don't need to be aware to find food. Trichoplax adherens, one of the simplest of all animals, moves around haphazardly. It slows down in the presence of food and speeds up in its absence. This is highly effective and makes the tiny creature spend more time where there is food than where there is not. But it never moves in a particular direction towards a particular target, and there's no need for it to be conscious of its environment. The first major step towards consciousness was probably taken when mobile selves started to move themselves directionally, moving towards what was good for them, say food, and away from what was less good, say someone else who thought that they were food. Take Dugicia tigrina, a tiny worm known for its funny face. Sometimes the worm is hungry and sometimes not. This means that when it moves, the worm self is not simply producing an automatic response to an external stimulus, but that its actions depend upon its inner physiological state, whether it's hungry or sated. When it's just eaten, the worm is less energetic, but when starved for a while, it will move itself in the direction of tasty things. It uses chemoreceptors on its head to smell its environment and guide it in the direction where the scent of food is strongest. After finding and eating a meal, our worm buddy heads back to a dark, sheltered spot to digest it in safety, until it's hungry again. But animals that blindly follow their sense of smell don't have a concrete objective in view. They still lack any sense of where they are heading. So the next step on the ladder of consciousness is to add some perception at a distance, like vision. Vision adds context and depth to our world. With vision comes a sense of the space we and our food exist in. It adds a whole new dimension to awareness and is a huge step towards more familiar consciousness. An optical apparatus like an eye enables us to visualize our goal and lock onto it. But even at this stage, a self is only able to pursue its food as long as it sees it. So the next logical step needs to happen on the inside. To visualize food in its absence, for example, a self needs to create some sort of inner representation of the world. Now an animal can continue looking for food even when it escapes its sensory range. Because of this inner representation of what is relevant in the world, it can remain focused on its food and its desire to get it. Our self now exists in a world it can get familiar with. The ability to remember things has emerged. Thanks to memory, animals can be distracted from a pursuit for a few seconds, but quickly continue their path afterwards. A related phenomenon is called object permanence. This describes our awareness that things continue to exist even when we can't see them. This cognitive skill is enjoyed by some mammals and birds, and perhaps other animals too. Human babies tend to develop this ability around the time they turn 8 months, while baby chickens show this ability within a day or two of being born. The capacity to remember a thing in its absence suggests at least a basic sense of time. A sense of time is a big step on the ladder of consciousness. It may also enable a self to look forward from the present moment and anticipate the future. Adult chickens, for example, are able to resist a meal put in front of them if they expect to receive a bigger meal as a prize for holding back for a while. This sort of delayed gratification means there is an ability to visualize a reward that only exists in the future, which can be quite a challenge even for adult humans. Western scrub jays are experts in delayed gratification. They show an even more elaborate sense of the future when they hide food in a cache to retrieve it at a later date. The scrub jays will even re-hide their food if they become aware that a potential thief has been watching them. This means that they know that there are other hungry selves out there who are aware and see the world from their own different perspective. Crafty scrub jays can sort of read the mind of their fellow birds. This ability to mind read is crucial for complex levels of consciousness. By putting yourself in the position of others, you can outsmart a rich competitor or empathize with a hungry friend. Language takes the ability to read minds and represent what is absent to a whole new level. Words enable us to construct hypotheses about the world, make detailed plans, and to communicate them with others. Words enable us to think about ourselves and our place in the universe, and even about our own consciousness, which is something we'll be doing more in future videos. So, what is the origin of our consciousness? It probably began as the directed motion of a hungry self towards a source of food, with the survival benefits this gave it over competitors that moved at random or not at all. It probably all started with the urge for more food. So even with the sophisticated consciousness that allows us to dream about space, build skyscrapers, or obsess about novels, it's not surprising that we can't stop thinking about where we'll get our next meal. Collectively, we've put so much thought and ingenuity into getting food that we can now just get our food to come to us with little conscious effort.